Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case. The case of Jorge Torres. Is there anything more horrific than a father murdering his own child? In the investigation and trial of crimes, mistakes in identifying the culprit can have dire consequences. One of the most heartbreaking situations is when an innocent person is wrongfully punished while the real culprit continues to be at large. This was on Mother's Day, when 8-year-old Laura Hobbs and her best friend, 9-year-old Crystal Tobias, decided to go for a short bike ride. They were expected to return within an hour, but vanished without a trace. Family members spent nearly the entire night looking for them. In the early morning, Laura's father, Jerry Hobbs, found her bike while climbing the hill, but Laura was still missing. The search for she and her friend continued. A couple of hours later, a few hundred meters from the bike, Jerry discovers suspicious figures lying motionless on the ground in the dim light of early morning. He quickly realized something was wrong. When they reached the scene, he discovered the bodies of Laura and her best friend Crystal, who had multiple stab wounds. It was clear that their deaths were brutal and prolonged. Sadly, this tragedy happened close to their home. Both girls lived in the small town of Xene, Illinois, which has a population of 20,000. Their deaths deeply affected the local community, sparking a desire among residents to uncover the truth and the cruel criminal responsible. However, it's difficult to uncover the full story. The police came under intense public pressure. So, they worked hard to gather any information that could help them inform the community and capture the perpetrator. A few days after the tragedy, the commander of the task force at the Lake County Major Crimes Department confirmed that has a suspect. Detectives had already spoken with Jerry. They think he is involved in the case. He was brought in for questioning on the day the bodies were discovered. The police noted that Jerry had been acting strangely. A background check revealed that he had been released from a Texas prison just a month prior. Overall, he had a significant history of legal troubles. Although Jerry had repaired his relationship with his daughter, could he handle the situation involving her and her friend? The girls were discovered lying next to each other, having been raped. The scene was horrific. Both had suffered multiple stab wounds and had been beaten. A forensic expert identified a total of 31 cuts from a blade, primarily on the upper body, chest, and neck. The injuries were similar for both girls. Laura had defensive wounds, suggesting she fought back in desperation. There was reason to believe that the killer intentionally caused maximum pain to his victims, targeting areas that would prolong suffering rather than lead to immediate death. Jerry firmly denied any wrongdoing. Consequently, he was questioned for hours by law enforcement officers who sought to piece together the events leading to the deaths of the two victims. After a lengthy interrogation, the detectives managed to obtain a confession, which was captured on video. Jerry said he and his wife Sheila returned home on Sunday around 3 o'clock. At that time, their 4 children were flying kites by the lake. Their daughter Laura asked her parents if she could go for a bike ride with a friend, mentioning that it was Mother's Day and she wanted to celebrate it with a festive ride. Even though Laura was still under house arrest for taking $40 from Jerry, Sheila chose to let her go. Jerry disagreed with Sheila, believing that Laura should complete her punishment to understand her mistake. However, Sheila convinced him, and Jerry decided not to interfere, he wanting to ensure that both Laura and Sheila had a nice Mother's Day. Laura was allowed to go for a walk and was expected to return in an hour. However, she did not come back on time. Initially, her parents thought she and her friends had lost track of time while enjoying themselves and would return soon. But as evening approached and Laura still hadn't arrived home, their concern grew. The path through the park was short, and it usually took about 20 minutes to walk. Given that she had been gone for several hours, her absence became increasingly worrying. Jerry decided to investigate. He planned to search for his daughter along the path and intended to discipline her for disobeying, so he set off down a dirt road. Jerry encountered Laura and Crystal, who were playing and ignoring their parents' requests. Upset, Jerry insisted it was time for his daughter to go home and said he would punish her. He wanted to take Laura home and told Crystal to go back as well since her parents were waiting for her. However, neither girl was willing to leave on their own. Jerry then turned to Laura and said they were leaving because she was too caught up in her play. Laura reacted by getting upset, and Jerry grabbed her hand. She resisted and screamed to be let go. Crystal also pleaded with him to release her friend and leave them alone. Both girls started to be disrespectful and rude to Jerry. When Jerry refused to let go of Laura's hand, Crystal pulled out a small switchblade and insisted that he release her. In a moment of confusion, Laura bit her father's hand, which made him angry. He struck her in the face, causing her to fall to the ground. Crystal then lunged at him, but he easily took the knife away from her. Once he had control, he hit Crystal in the face, and she also fell. Furious, Crystal stood up and attacked Jerry, but he responded by stabbing her in the chest several times. Afterward, he approached Laura, who was desperately trying to defend herself, but she was no match for him. He struck her in the face again, and then stabbed her multiple times with the knife. Jerry's statements were collected after 24 hours of interrogation. The police believed they had caught the real criminal. He detailed the brutal aspects of the attack, information only the perpetrator would know. Despite his confession, it was hard to accept that a father could harm his own daughter and her friend so viciously. The detectives were particularly suspicious due to Jerry's criminal history. Born in 1970, Jerry Hobbs dropped out of school after 8th grade. He was known for his hot temper, which often led him into trouble. His criminal career began soon after school, with significant offenses occurring in 1990, when he first served several months in a Texas state prison. After that point, he was released but then re-imprisoned, typically for petty offenses. The list of criminal activities included possession of illegal substances and multiple assaults on individuals for theft. There were serious underlying issues that contributed to these crimes. In August 2001, Jerry attacked his wife while they were living in a trailer. The situation escalated into physical violence. 3 neighbors attempted to intervene, but Jerry, in a fit of rage, grabbed a chainsaw and chased them around the trailer park. He only stopped when one of the men struck him in the back with a shovel, causing him to fall and become incapacitated. By that time, the police had been called, and they arrived shortly after to take control of the situation. In December 2002, he was convicted and received a suspended sentence. However, he failed to report to his probation officer, leading to the revocation of his probation. In October 2003, he was sent to prison, where he served 18 months. He was finally released in April 2005. After his release, he took a bus to Zane. He visited Sheila's parents' house, where he reunited with Sheila and their 4 children. Laura and her 2 brothers were from Jerry's relationship with Sheila, while her eldest child was from her previous marriage. Jerry put aside past grievances and hoped to rebuild their relationship and live together as a family again. Jerry spent a lot of time reflecting over the past year and a half, dreaming of starting a new life. Despite the challenges in their relationship, Sheila genuinely loved Jerry, and they decided to give their relationship another chance. Unfortunately, their efforts were in vain. Just a month after they reunited, a tragic incident occurred. One day began positively, with children riding bicycles and roller skates along the forest path. Many families were having barbecues, making the area lively and seemingly safe. There had never been any incidents in the past, and parents often allowed their children to explore on their own. It was puzzling that no one seemed to have heard anything. There were no witnesses to the double murder. After Jerry confessed, the police arrested him, and he was held in custody without bail for over 2 years while the prosecution prepared for trial. During the investigation, several strange inconsistencies came to light. Investigative agency found it hard to believe that the 8- and 9-year-old girls had a knife and attacked him, prompting him to fight back and ultimately kill them in a moment of anger. Additionally, it was odd that the girls refused to go home after their father found them walking alone in the dark. Were the schoolgirls really not afraid to be outside at that hour? All of this seemed absurd. In his confession, Jerry did not mention anything about rape, even though the girls had experienced sexual violence at the crime scene. Forensic evidence later uncovered more details about the terrible events that occurred that day. Scientists found male DNA samples, but these did not match Jerry. Instead, they belonged to an unidentified man. Despite this evidence, investigators proposed their own explanation. However, they did not explain how male DNA could be found on the girls, making their reasoning seem even more questionable. The charges indicate that it was a serious case. They had Jerry's confession and his criminal background, so winning in court seemed like a formality. Details about the DNA evidence were not revealed. The video recordings of the interrogations were sufficient to persuade the jury. As a result, Laura's father was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 2009, a significant change occurred in Arlington, Virginia. Amanda Snell, a 20-year-old servicewoman, lived there. On July 13, 2009, she failed to report for her shift at Fort Myer, raising concerns among her supervisors. Amanda was typically responsible and committed to her career, so not showing up for duty without notice was out of character for her. To check on her well-being, management sent several colleagues to her dormitory. They knocked on her door, rang the doorbell, and attempted to reach her by phone, but received no response. When they found her door unlocked, they entered the room. The first alarming sign was that her wallet and ID were untouched. The military quickly discovered blood and signs of a robbery in the bedroom. Amanda's body was found in the closet. She had been severely beaten, and a cord from a household appliance was still tied around her neck, with a pillowcase over her head. Investigators determined that she had died about 2 days before her body was discovered. Numerous pieces of evidence were collected from the crime scene, including a sample of the pillowcase. The police noted that her laptop, phone, and bed sheets were missing, and they found several footprints in the room, suggesting that another person had been present. Since the base was secured against outsiders, this indicated that the perpetrator likely lived or worked there. Forensic experts identified the shoe prints as Nike Air Force One, which were very popular on the base at the time, providing no leads for the police in their search for the suspect. Months went by. On February 27, 2010, another attack occurred just 5 kilometers from Amanda's workplace in Arlington. In the early hours of the morning, 2 female postgraduate students were returning from dinner when a man confronted them at the entrance of their building. He threatened them with a weapon, forced them inside, and followed them with his gun drawn. He bound their hands with electrical cords and ordered one of them to get into his car. He then drove her to a remote area outside the city, where he raped her. The attacker strangled her until she lost consciousness and left her to die in a wooded area covered in snow, not considering that she might survive the assault. The girl regained her senses and made her way to the nearest road, where a motorist found her and offered help. He stopped and called emergency services. The student, suffering from hypothermia, was taken to the hospital. Meanwhile, her friend had also contacted the authorities. Fortunately, they did not find any immediate danger. After being discharged, she spoke with the police and provided valuable information to the investigators. The most significant breakthrough was her detailed description of the attacker and his car. She described him as a short, smooth-skinned Hispanic man who drove a silver car. Detectives quickly recognized that the handwriting matched that of the criminal who attacked Amanda. Additionally, the police had obtained DNA from the person who attempted to take the girl's life. That her miraculous rescue would set off a series of events that would significantly impact many lives. Later that evening, officers collected a DNA sample from Amanda's. In the car described by the girl, they discovered the university ID of the kidnapped girl along with her earring, which helped establish a connection between the main suspect and the attack. The main suspect has since been taken into custody while awaiting trial. Several months went by as the police worked to understand the details of these disturbing events. Eventually, the DNA sample was analyzed and matched with the National Criminal Database. Law enforcement officials were taken aback by an unexpected discovery. The DNA found on the bodies of Laura and Crystal, who were murdered in 2005 in Zane, matched that of this suspect. At the time of the girls' murders, the suspect, Jorge Torres, was just 16 years old and lived in Zane. The police were further shocked to find out that he was a friend of Crystal's older brother. This investigation into the brutal attack revealed a shocking miscarriage of justice. Jerry, the father of Laura, was wrongfully imprisoned for a crime he did not commit. After spending many years in prison, Jerry began to show significant changes in his behavior. 2 weeks after DNA evidence linked Jorge to the crime, police identified the true killer of the two schoolgirls. The charges against Jerry were dropped, and he was released from prison in early August 2010. After the murders of the schoolgirls, Jorge was not apprehended and graduated from high school in 2006. Just a few months later, he enlisted in the Marines. The investigation revealed then he had boasted about being part of the Marines, an important unit of the U.S. Armed Forces. But this did not help his criminal image. He remained a ruthless monster and continued his violent actions. Now, it was necessary to examine his potential involvement in other attacks. When in prison, Jorge was still scheming and manipulating events. But the manipulative tactics Jorge used could no longer be hidden. Alongside the DNA testing, additional evidence was necessary to prove his involvement in the murder of the schoolgirls. To gather this evidence, authorities decided to recruit informants from among the prisoners in exchange for reduced sentences. A suitable informant was chosen. He was a former restaurant owner convicted of financial crimes and had no prior violent crime record. He willingly agreed to cooperate with the police. During a week in August 2010, he was approached to communicate with Jorge. This person said, in his confession, Jorge stated that he entered Amanda's apartment in the early morning with the intention of robbing and assaulting her. When Amanda woke up and saw him, he took advantage of her shock, tying her hands with a wire and wrapping a cord around her neck because he feared she would recognize him and report him to the police. Jorge claimed that she had no time to fight back. He coldly detailed how he assaulted Amanda while she was suffering, and then concealed her body in a closet to delay its discovery. The informant reported that Jorge spoke about his actions with a sense of pride, almost bragging, making law enforcement officers were shocked. Jorge's behavior indicated possible psychopathic traits, as individuals with such disorders often seek admiration. Following this confession, the police chose to reopen Amanda's case. They discovered that Jorge was a colleague of Amanda and lived directly across the hall from her. In his room, officers found a gun and a computer containing numerous graphic videos of the rape and torture of women. Additionally, Jorge was wearing Nike Air Force One sneakers that matched the shoe prints at the scene of Amanda's murder. Forensic scientists started re-examining samples from the pillowcase found on Amanda's head and from the bedsheet. DNA testing eventually revealed a match, adding one more victim to the list of crimes linked to this dangerous criminal. Although detectives believed he might be involved in other similar offenses, they found no evidence to support this. The police were left with a serious threat to society who had been free for years. It was finally time to pursue justice. The trial of the case in which the graduate student victim survived the attack began in December 2010. The defendant was found guilty of several charges, including kidnapping, rape, and attempted first-degree murder, and was sentenced to life in prison. This was just the beginning of multiple trials. The trial for the murder of Amanda Snell began in 2014, after prosecutors presented Jorge's recorded confession and DNA evidence. The jury unanimously supported the prosecution. In late May of that year, the judge sentenced Jorge to death. In mid-November, he was extradited to Lake County, Illinois, to face trial for the murders of Laura and Crystal. Although the attacker had already been sentenced to death, the state attorney believed it was essential to conduct hearings to honor the victims and their families. The trial started in mid-September 2018. Jorge opted for a plea deal, giving up his right to a trial and admitting to the intentional murders of 2 schoolgirls. He received a 50-year prison sentence for each murder, but his life sentence was already revoked. He returned to a Virginia prison to await the death penalty while his appeals were under review. The death penalty was abolished in the state in 2021, so Jorge is now serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. One key question remains: why would the biological father of one of the murdered schoolgirls take the blame for this terrible crime? In 2005, Jerry briefly explained his reasoning to his mother, stating that he had been broken by the police during interrogation. Later, after his release, he shared more details with journalists. He revealed that he had not slept for over a day and was actively searching for his daughter with Crystal's father when he learned of her death. Overwhelmed by shock, he was confused and in pain, and the police exploited this vulnerability during the lengthy interrogation to extract his shocking confession. Human rights activists claimed that Jerry faced constant pressure from law enforcement, who used various tactics to force him into a confession. As a result of their actions, Jerry lost 5 years of his life in prison. After these events, the man decided to seek compensation for moral damages because he now knows that the police deliberately ignored the most valuable evidence that confirmed his innocence and locked him up instead of looking for the real killer. DNA samples obtained after the rape clearly showed that Jerry was not involved in the crime, yet law enforcement chose not to pursue the real culprit and continued to charge him. Now, it took multiple crimes being committed for the truth to finally come to light and for an innocent man to be set free. During the recent press conference regarding this incident, the state attorney addressed the media. He made efforts to downplay the situation and stressed that no one obstructed the detainees' access to legal counsel. He claimed that the detainees' rights were fully respected during questioning. According to him, Jerry's own behavior raised suspicions, and his past criminal record further damaged his credibility, leading the police to suspect his involvement in the girls' deaths. Detectives believed he had knowledge relevant to the case and continued to press him for answers, but Jerry maintained that this was merely an unfortunate coincidence. A few hours into the interrogation, the police took away Jerry's clothes, claiming they needed to analyze them. Instead, they gave him a thin suit that left him cold. They repeatedly showed him disturbing photographs from the murder scene and intimidated him with threats. Although Jerry consistently refused to confess, the police began threatening to arrest Sheila, suggesting that their children would be left without parents. He couldn't let that happen. To obtain a confession that could be used in court, they needed to record it on video. There was supposed to be no coercion or aggression from the officers, but many takes were necessary because Jerry initially refused to read the confession prepared by the investigator. Ultimately, the threats led him to comply with the detectives' demands. In February 2014, the civil lawsuit of a wrongfully convicted man was resolved, resulting in an award of over $6 million. However, he does not view this as a true victory. He emphasizes the importance of the wrongful conviction, which led to reforms in Lake County's law enforcement system. He notes that while he was imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit, the actual killer continued to rape and murder other victims. Fortunately, that killer is now in prison and can no longer harm anyone. Police believe he is a serial killer, and it's likely that there were additional victims. An investigation into other cases of forced confessions revealed that 4 more innocent men were also wrongfully convicted. DNA evidence cleared them, but this crucial information was ignored by the Lake County prosecutor at the time. These 4 men spent a total of 75 years in prison and are now free. The case of Jorge Torres serves as a stark reminder of the devastating impact of violent crime and the long road to justice for victims and their families. Jorge's crimes, which include the brutal murders of Laura Hobbs and Crystal Tobias in 2005, as well as the subsequent murder of Amanda Snell in 2009, went unsolved for years, leaving a trail of pain and confusion in their wake. His eventual conviction, made possible by DNA evidence, not only exonerated Jerry Hobbs, who was wrongfully imprisoned for the murders of the 2 young girls, but also revealed the extent of Jorge's crimes. The case underscores the vital role that forensic science plays in ensuring justice and preventing wrongful convictions, and serves as a stark reminder of the necessity of thorough investigations in the pursuit of the truth. Thanks to the persistence of law enforcement and the power of DNA testing, justice was finally served, although the damage done to the lives and spirits of those affected remains irreparable. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of David Camm. David Camm was born in 1964 in Albany, Indiana, USA. He grew up to be a healthy and famous young man, especially popular with women. In 1984, he met Kimberly Wren, a beautiful woman who instantly captured his heart. The two quickly realized their feelings for each other. Nevertheless, their love was complicated by the fact that David was already married to his high school sweetheart. From his marriage, he had a daughter, but he began a secret relationship with Kimberly. Eventually, this affair was discovered, leading to his divorce. 3 years later, David and Kimberly got married. Kimberly believed she had found the love of her life and hoped to spend forever with him. Unfortunately, David was not the perfect husband she thought he was. Only 3 years after the wedding day, David met a new woman, Stephanie McCarthy, at the fitness center where he regularly trained. They initially developed a close friendship that endured. Even after David had a son, Bradley, from his marriage to Kimberly in 1993. During this time, David maintained friendly relations with the fitness trainer, Stephanie. For 2 years, David and Stephanie's connection remained platonic, partly because Stephanie had a lover at the time, but the attraction between them was evident. After Stephanie broke up with her lover in 1994, David seized the opportunity to ask her out. Without hesitation, he made his intentions clear and went public with the affair, openly taking Stephanie to car races, restaurants, and a nightclub. Kimberly began to suspect her husband David was being unfaithful while she was pregnant with their second child. When confronted, David admitted to having an affair with his fitness trainer. This thing led to the demise of their marriage. At 5 months pregnant, Kimberly asked David to move out of their home. He called his mother to see if he could move back in, but she refused, causing him to become furious. His parents' failure to help him, instead siding with Kimberly, left David feeling rejected. As the conversation escalated, David started smashing the kitchen, prompting his mother to call the police. Despite the police being called, they did not take any action against David due to his being a colleague. Instead, they advised him to calm down and avoid tarnishing the reputation of the police force. The marriage eventually ended, and David moved into a new apartment, where his new girlfriend Stephanie joined him, even though she had her own place. This move further alienated David from his relatives, who sided with Kimberly and were appalled by his betrayal. David filed for divorce right when Kimberly, his pregnant wife, needed him most, as she was about to give birth to their second child. Their baby girl, Jill, was born on February 28, 1995. On the day of the birth, David was absent. Instead, David's parents were there to provide support to Kimberly, who had been left alone by her husband. David's new relationship with Stephanie was also short-lived. It ended in March 1995 when he found out that she had been secretly meeting her ex-boyfriend at the gym where she worked. To David's dismay, Stephanie had been developing feelings for her ex again. David initially suspected something when Stephanie began disappearing on dates, and eventually, he discovered the truth. When he confronted Stephanie after she returned home late from work, he became enraged. Feeling betrayed, David pulled out his 9mm pistol, threatening to harm her and then himself. Luckily, he was talked out of doing something reckless. After this tumultuous confrontation, Stephanie left David, and it became clear that she had gone back to her ex-boyfriend, ending their relationship. Following his introspective moment, David reached out to his ex-wife Kimberly to apologize for past mistakes. To his surprise, she was still emotionally invested in him and chose to forgive him. As it happened, Kimberly was going through a difficult time and needed support, creating a perfect opportunity for David to make amends and rekindle their relationship. David took the opportunity, he packed his belongings and moved back in with Kimberly, and also managed to improve his relationship with his parents. They were pleased to see their son think things through and subsequently offered their renewed support. Kimberly later started a well-paying job at an insurance company, while David left his position as a police officer, despite having over 10 years of experience. He transitioned to working with his uncle at a waterproofing store. Turns out, he quit being a police officer not by accident. The real reason comes from the fact that he already has many stains on his record, due to facing many complaints of inappropriate behavior. David changed careers and found that his new job as a store employee actually paid more than his previous role as a patrol officer. His uncle's success in the store likely contributed to this positive change. David and his wife, Kimberly, were able to fulfill their long-held dream of building a home in Georgetown, Indiana. This new house symbolized the healing of their relationship and indicated that everything was going well again. It felt as though life had finally returned to normal. The family was happy in many ways, and David's transformation played a significant role in this. Kimberly noticed that he had changed for the better. He started spending much more time with their son and daughter. However, this positive change only scratched the surface. The reality is David's struggle with addiction to a carefree lifestyle was still present. In 1997, he met an old friend, Michelle, and he secretly began an affair. They would meet in the back seat of his car, but the relationship ended quickly when Michelle learned about David's marriage and children. However, David did not give up and quickly found another love interest. Her name was Lisa, the girlfriend of one of David's friends. David would repeat the same pattern over and over again. He is constantly looking for new lovers, ignoring Kimberly's parents' requests that he change his ways. David was assertive, and also had a short temper, and would become angry if his advances were rejected. However, he would quickly lose interest in the women he pursued and move on to someone new. This dissolute behavior went on behind his wife's back for about 6 years. On September 28, 2000, Kimberly picked up her youngest daughter, Jill, 5 years old, from dance class. Jill was experiencing sharp pain in her lower abdomen, so they decided to leave class early. She also picked up her 7-year-old son, Bradley, from his swimming lessons. According to the neighbors, who lived next door, Kimberly and the children returned home around 7:30 p.m. The neighbors saw Kimberly pulling into her driveway in her car. Kimberly opened the garage door and drove inside, spending a considerable amount of time there. The neighbors didn't know what happened there, they didn't pay any attention to her, but a few times, when they looked out the window, they saw her car was still there. No screams or strange noises were heard until 9:20 p.m. At that time, David was playing basketball and came home late from the game. Therefore, he rushed back home to avoid arguing with his wife and put the children to bed in time. The drive home took about 5 minutes. Upon arriving home around 9:30 p.m., he was surprised to find the garage door still open. As he entered, he was met with a horrific scene. His wife, Kimberly, half naked and lying in a pool of blood, had a gunshot wound to the head. The car's driver's side door was open, and their children were in the back seat. Their daughter Jill was alive, but their son Bradley seemed lifeless. However, David saw Bradley flinch and believed the boy could still be saved, so he then rushed to pull Bradley out of the car. David, a former police officer, found Bradley still warm and attempted to administer first aid. Unfortunately, it was too late, and the child had already passed away. In a state of panic, David immediately called 911 and informed the dispatcher of the tragedy. He requested that all available paramedics and police officers be sent to his house. As his wife and children were dead, David then rushed to his uncle's house, which was nearby. His uncle, a serviceman, was shocked by the news and grabbed his gun to accompany David back to the house. Upon their return, David overcome with grief, and his uncle had to physically restrain him from re-entering the house. Soon after, police and an ambulance arrived at the scene. Police initially believed the murder was linked to a botched robbery, in which Kimberly and her children returned home at an unfortunate time and were attacked. However, there were no signs of forced entry, and the home's contents were intact. Kimberly was found with her pants down and her shoes neatly placed on the roof of the car. This led detectives to suspect that a sexual assault had occurred, and it was believed that she was shot to prevent her from being a witness, especially since her children were also killed. However, the crime scene didn't appear to be a random. Only 3 shell casings were found at the scene, matching the number of shots to the head, with no stray bullets or evidence of a wild shooting spree. A forensic examination revealed skin cells under Kimberly's fingernails, which were forwarded to the lab for DNA testing. Additionally, a palm print was found on the car used by Kimberly. Another significant piece of evidence was a gray sweatshirt discovered in the back seat with her deceased son, Bradley. Based on this evidence, the possibility of robbery was dismissed, although the theory of rape remained under investigation. The police began to focus on David Cam, a former policeman, as their primary suspect, as it is often the closest individuals who are involved. Although David had never displayed aggression towards his family before this incident, his depraved lifestyle became a point of interest for detectives. If before it was just a reason for neighbors and colleagues to discuss, now it is more like a motive for murder. It was rumored that the relationship was deteriorating, possibly heading toward divorce due to infidelity, which may have led David to feel desperate or vengeful. Additionally, a new clue was found just days before the murder: the life insurance payout unexpectedly increased. This detail further fueled the investigation. Interrogating David, a former police officer, was very difficult because he was familiar with investigative techniques. As a result, detectives employed alternative strategies. They pressured him to confess, suggesting all evidence pointed to him, but David consistently denied any involvement. He asserted that he had no connection to the family's murder and never wished them harm. According to David, his marriage to Kimberly was not always smooth, they experiencing issues common in relationships. He candidly admitted to constantly cheating on his wife but claimed to still love her and their children. He expressed surprise that he did not know who could harm his wife and children. He also said that both he and his wife had very good relationships with people around them and that his wife had no enemies. A forensic examination revealed that Kimberly had not been raped, but their daughter, Jill, showed signs of inflammation, which could be a sign of violence or a genitourinary condition, although the experts did not properly note this in the report. The autopsy confirmed that 3 people died between 7:30 and 8:30 p.m. David's behavior was suspicious, particularly when he initially refused to hand over his clothes to investigators, but he eventually consented. He also willingly provided samples for DNA testing. However, following this, David began to threaten the detective in charge of the interrogation, claiming that if he went to jail, he would return to kill them all. Forensic experts inspected the crime scene and compared the evidence found with the condition of the bodies. Upon arrival, a specialist noticed a strong smell of bleach at the scene. They found a large bucket and a mop, indicating someone had attempted to clean up blood stains and rearrange the furniture. Detectives suspect that this was deliberately intended to eliminate evidence. Robbers or rapists typically do not clean up after themselves. There were several unusual elements in the case, such as signs of cleaning, Kimberly being undressed, an unknown sweatshirt on Bradley, and Jill having unexplained injuries. These factors suggested that the scene had been staged, and David, an experienced policeman, it is entirely possible to do this. The police had significant doubts about the fingerprints found on the car. The vehicle had been parked in public places every day, meaning the fingerprints could belong to any city resident and weren't necessarily linked to the crime. Accurately identifying the owner of the fingerprints was not possible. Another puzzling aspect was the position of Kimberly's shoes. It had been removed from her feet and neatly placed on the car's roof. Investigators considered 2 theories. One suggested that Kimberly had taken off her shoes while still in the car and put them on the roof when she exited. However, it was unclear why she would do this. Perhaps she drove without shoes, but David insisted that his wife never drove that way. The second hypothesis is the criminal could have had a strange obsession with women's shoes. Besides, the gray sweatshirt found on Bradley was not recognized by David. He had no knowledge of its origin or ownership, suggesting it likely belonged to the criminal. But why was it on the child? Based on the evidence collected, 36-year-old David Cam was arrested for the murder of his family, facing charges for 3 murders. During the trial, the microscopic blood spatter on his clothes became the primary evidence of his guilt. The motive was thought to stem from infidelity and promiscuity, which drove him to commit extreme acts. Neighbors testified that they heard gunshots coming from the garage around 9:20 p.m. as soon as David returned home. The prosecution maintained that David was guilty, while the defense presented counterarguments. Experts noted that if David had shot someone at close range, there would have been an amount of blood splatter on his clothes. In many more visible stains. David claimed to have an alibi, with 11 witnesses confirming that he had been at a basketball game until at least 9 p.m. This was also backed up by billing records from his cell phone. Despite this, the prosecutors argued that they had compelling reasons to consider him the murderer. They questioned his alibi, citing his affairs. 12 women he had recently been involved with testified that he had flirted with them and used his police badge and uniform to approach there. The DNA evidence from the crime scene was expected to be the primary proof of David's guilt. However, testing revealed no match with David's DNA. Additionally, the handprint found on the vehicle did not belong his. Despite analyzing all collected materials through a criminal database, no connections were found. Ultimately, investigators discovered 8 microscopic drops of blood on David's clothes, which were identified as belonging to his daughter, Jill. An expert witness at the crime scene initially suggested that the blood drops found on clothing could only result a point-blank shooting. However, it was later discovered that this person was just an ordinary photographer and not a forensic scientist. Despite this, he acted as a forensic scientist during the first trial and drew significant conclusions. Additionally, David's alibi was also questioned. 11 witnesses consistently testified that he was going to the game and could not have been home when the murder occurred. Furthermore, David would have needed to shower and change his clothes afterwards. Medical examinations of Jill revealed that the trauma to her genitals was due to inflammation she was experiencing at the time. This led to the rejection of the original theory that David had perpetrated sexual violence against his daughter. The defense argued that the tiny blood droplets, once considered crucial evidence of guilt, were too small to accuse. They contended that if David had repeatedly shot his children and wife, there would have been a larger amount of blood and bigger stains. They claimed that these small blood stains on David's shirt were from him reaching over Jill to help Bradley out of the car. On March 17, 2002, David Camm was found guilty of murdering 3 individuals and was sentenced to 195 years in prison. He quickly appealed the decision, claiming that the trial had been unfair and that he had been wrongly convicted. In August 2004, the Supreme Court agreed to hear his appeal. However, the prosecution maintained that David was responsible for the murders of his family. A retrial took place in 2005, during which it was discovered that some DNA evidence had not been compared with existing databases by the police. This raises suspicions that there may have been a plot to harm David. The investigators had not pursued other suspects and focused solely on him. After the retrial, police re-examined the DNA samples from the crime scene and found a match with a criminal named Charles Bonney, who had been recently released from prison. Charles acknowledged that a sweatshirt found at the scene belonged to him but claimed he had donated it to the Salvation Army long before the crime and did not know what had happened to it. Charles owned a pair of fancy women's shoes and had previously been involved in 3 kidnappings of women. He was also known by the nickname Ridge, which was written on a sweatshirt that was found but could not be identified. Forensic analysis of the evidence revealed that palm prints, DNA from the clothes, and DNA from Kimberly's underwear and under her fingernails all matched Charles. Before committing the crime, he was out on bail and was a suspect to the police, who later summoned him for questioning. During the interrogation, Charles denied any involvement in the murder and lied in response to all police inquiries. He frequently changed his story. Eventually, he claimed that he had gone to David's house to sell him a gun. According to him, after purchasing the weapon, David shot his entire family. Charles stated that he was still in the house at the time but felt compelled to remain silent because he was threatened with death. He insisted that he tried to escape but accidentally tripped over one of Kimberly's shoes. He tried to present himself as a good person, explaining to the police that he had picked up Kimberly's shoes and placed them on the roof of car. However, he could not account for how his DNA was found on Kimberly's underwear and body, despite claiming he had not touched her. Everyone believed that Charles's claims were false. During a re-examination of the evidence, experts discovered a new set of DNA samples belonging to Charles's ex-girlfriend, which had been found at the crime scene by accident. She was questioned, and it emerged that on the night of the murder, Charles had returned home in a disturbed state, nervous, covered in blood, and breathing heavily. Additionally, he was found to have a gun. Meanwhile, Charles showed a keen interest in the investigation into the murder of the Kimberly family, closely following every news update on TV. This behavior made his ex-girlfriend suspicious of his involvement in the crime. Furthermore, Charles failed a polygraph test. As a result, Charles Bonney was arrested and charged with the murders of Kimberly and her 2 children, Bradley and Jill, but he maintained his innocence. During his trial, he quickly pleaded guilty to all 3 charges on his lawyer's advice but did not provide any details about the crime. He received a sentence of 225 years in prison. Although the murderer, Charles, has confessed to the crime and been convicted, but David Camm's trial is still ongoing. It seemed like it was time to drop all charges against David and release him. However, prosecution began to argue that David was an accomplice to the crime and colluded with Charles. The primary evidence supporting this claim was the intimate injuries found on David's daughter, Jill. It was believed that David had a history of domestic abuse and had also molested his daughter. When his wife discovered this, she threatened to go to the police, leading him to decide to kill his entire family. David supposedly conspired with Charles, who had been released from prison, to cover up his heinous actions. Although David might not have physically participated in the murders, the prosecution argued that he incited Charles to commit the act and served as the ideological mastermind behind it. During the new trial, David denied all these allegations. Another forensic expert examined Jill's body and confirmed that there was no evidence of violence. Instead, the inflammation was linked to a medical condition. The defense argued that David and Charles had never met, had no mutual acquaintances, and there was no correspondence, phone calls, or any other form of communication between them. On March 6, 2006, David was once again found guilty of murdering his family and was sentenced to life in prison. He immediately filed an appeal, particularly upset that the new charges included sexual abuse of his own daughter. However, the prosecution failed to present any evidence of violence. The appellate court reviewed the case materials and again ruled in favor of David, citing insufficient evidence to uphold the original sentence. It was revealed that the previous prosecutor, who was accusing David, had a financial interest in the case because he was under contract to write a book about it. This thing of interest compromised his objectivity. A new prosecutor took over the case, leading to the discovery of new evidence. A photographer, who had testified in the first two trials as an expert, admitted to lying about his qualifications and revealed that he was not a forensic scientist. Further analysis of the DNA samples confirmed that Charles had left traces at the crime scene and on the victims. Despite this evidence, David continued to face accusations, with the financial motive being highlighted. He had collected $750,000 in life insurance after his wife's death. Ultimately, on October 24, 2013, David Camm was acquitted of all charges. Nevertheless, there remained some who were convinced of his guilt, as well as those who believed in his innocence. Following his acquittal, David Camm filed a lawsuit against the county, seeking $30 million in damages for the emotional distress he suffered. The judge acknowledged that the state's experts had reasonably concluded that the blood spatter indicated David's involvement and asserted that no police officer had intentionally tried to frame him. David was awarded $5 million in moral damages for the time he spent in prison. The parents of Kimberly sought payment from him, believing he was still guilty of her death due to financial motives. They demanded a portion of the money he received from insurance and moral compensation. Charles Bonney remains in prison, serving a sentence of 225 years. Remarkably, it took David 13 years to prove his innocence. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Tracy Roberts. In 1998, the Tracy Roberts family relocated from Chicago to the small town of Early, Iowa. The couple, Tracy and Michael, were in their second marriages and each had a son from previous relationships. Tracy was American, while Michael was originally from Australia. They were seen as a respectable young family by the local community. Michael was a computer expert who ran an IT business from home, with many innovative ideas he aimed to pursue. Tracy is an active and sociable housewife who enjoys sports. The couple met online and got married just 18 days after meeting in person. They have since had 2 children, a boy and a girl, and appear to be a very happy family. Many people admired Michael's determination, including his neighbor Mona, a real estate broker with whom they had completed several successful transactions. Mona was eager to continue working with Michael. She said that her 20-year-old son, Dustin, was very private and had a hard time keeping a job. He had tried many different positions but had not been able to hold any for long. Michael suggested that help Dustin discover his strengths. Later, he began teaching Dustin the basics of business. He took him on trips and supported him in attending church. Michael was generally seen as kind, pleasant, and empathetic, while his wife was regarded as sweet and sociable. They raised 3 children together, with Tracy managing the household and children while Michael focused on work, often traveling for business. However, an unexpected situation happened to Tracy's family. On the evening of December 13, 2001, in the town of Early, Tracy was in the kitchen preparing dinner with her children. While the food was being heated, she was also bathing her 1-year-old daughter upstairs. Meanwhile, her 2 older boys, ages 3 and 11, were watching television in the older boy's bedroom. Suddenly, the boys were startled by a piercing scream from their mother. The eldest, Bert, rushed to see what was happening. He saw Tracy trying to enter the room, but someone grabbed her by the hair and pulled her back into the hallway. Holding her baby daughter, Tracy managed to hand her over to Bert before a struggle with the attacker ensued. Tracy slammed the door shut behind her, and the boys could hear the sounds of a struggle and their mother's muffled cries for help. Terrified and unsure of what to do, Bert listened as the noises escalated. Then, after a brief silence, a shot rang out. During the attack, Tracy managed to defend herself against the criminals. One was killed, and the other escaped. Bert called 911 around 7 p.m., reporting that strangers had broken into their home and attacked his mother. Police officers took the call seriously and rushed to the address. It was unclear what had happened to Tracy and her 3 children at that time. Paramedics then arrived to find the children sobbing and Tracy repeatedly shouting that an intruder was still upstairs and pointing towards the stairs. However, as per protocol, paramedics could not enter the house until police had confirmed that the house was secure. The police arrived and went up to the 2nd floor where they found a young man lying dead in a pool of blood. There was no one else in the room. Tracy was quickly placed in an ambulance by a doctor and taken to the nearest medical center. The scene revealed a shocking crime. The entire family was overwhelmed and confused by the situation. The police began an investigation to shed light on this complicated situation. The small town where the incident occurred was a quiet and peaceful community of about 500 residents, all of whom knew each other well. The police began their investigation by questioning Bert, the eldest son. Bert had witnessed an attack on his mother. The attacker had pulled her hair back. Stunned, the boy knew he had to act to protect himself and the other children, so he grabbed a baseball bat, ready to fight off anyone who entered his room. When the chaos died down, he could only hear his mother breathing heavily. Finally, he heard the voices of 2 men outside starting to bang on the door. In fear, the boy began to scream, trying to scare the intruders away. Outside, the men shouted about having guns, and then several shots were fired. Suddenly, his mother opened the door. Bert was relieved that it was finally over. He then called 911. After hearing about the incident, Mona rushed to the scene. She was looking for her 20-year-old son, Dustin, a family friend. His car was parked in a private driveway, but when she arrived, the entire area, including Dustin's car, was cordoned off. She was not allowed into Tracy's house. Mona asked the officers about her son's condition, but they told her that he was dead. Dustin was found lying in a pool of blood near a 2nd-floor bedroom. Tracy had shot him during a struggle. The police did not share any further information with Mona. Tracy woke up in a hospital 20 kilometers from her home. She had injuries to her neck that suggested she had been strangled. Tracy told the police what had happened that night. While she was bathing her daughter on the 2nd floor, she heard noises downstairs. Thinking that her husband had returned early from a business trip, she went down to check. But she discovered 2 men. When they started to go upstairs, Tracy quickly took her daughter to Bert's room and left the 3 children in the room. She then tried to enter the room and close the door, but one of the men grabbed her hair and dragged her into the hallway. Then one of the attackers used her jeans to strangle her. During the struggle, Tracy lost consciousness and the attackers lost focus. When she regained consciousness, she heard screaming outside the door. Realizing this was her chance to escape, she got up and ran to the gun safe next to the bed in the master bedroom. Although the attackers chased her, she managed to turn a few numbers and retrieve a gun. Tracy aimed at them and pulled the trigger, but nothing happened because the safety was still on. The attackers were caught off guard, allowing her to fire again after removing the safety. The loud bang stunned her, and she continued to fire at the attackers until the room filled with smoke. Tracy didn't see the criminals, but she heard someone running away from the house. One of the criminals fell, while the other managed to escape. She also heard her frightened children calling her name, so she rushed into the room and opened the door. In a moment of panic, her son swung a bat at her, trying to protect himself, and she narrowly avoided being hit. The most important thing was that the children were safe. As the smoke cleared in the main bedroom, Tracy saw Dustin, a 20-year-old, lying on the floor but still alive. He began to get up, and in her shock, she grabbed the gun and ordered him to stay down, desperate for everything to stop. She yelled at him not to move, but Dustin, who was the son of her friend Mona, didn't listen. He stood up and approached her. Worried for her and the children's safety, she fired several shots, and Dustin fell to his death. Tracy recounted that earlier that day, Dustin visited their home. When he discovered that her husband was away on a business trip, he lingered on the porch for a long time, seemingly unwilling to leave. His behavior was unusual, and Tracy ultimately had to shut the door in his face. The Tracy described a second participant in the crime as tall, with dark hair, around 30 years old, but she never saw his face. That evening, Tracy's husband, Michael, was on a business trip in Minneapolis. It was unclear why Dustin, whom Michael was helping, would attack Tracy and their children. The second killer was still at large, raising fears that he might return for revenge. This left Tracy feeling fearful, she unable to sleep because she was worried about her family's safety. The police had a hard time identifying the second suspect, based only on the vague description provided by Tracy. They began investigating Dustin's social connections to determine who might have accompanied him to Tracy's family home. Many people consider Tracy a hero. She gave many interviews to journalists. In front of the cameras, she and her husband, Michael, held hands, and she calmly said that she did what she had to do to protect her family, and the whole hall applauded. Many people thought that her actions were justified. Tracy was brave, she could protect not only herself but also her children. The police were wary of accepting anyone's testimony without evidence, so they began a thorough investigation of the events surrounding the case, finding the story unconvincing. Mona was going through the most difficult time of her life and was heartbroken. To her, the circumstances of her son's murder, as Tracy described them, were meaningless. She was haunted by nightmares of the attack that took her son's life. Mona, the mother of the young man who was shot, spoke to the media about her shock over the incident. She described Dustin as a kind person who had never shown aggression and had no criminal history. There was no reason for him to attack the Tracy family. However, Dustin had to see a psychologist with his mother. He had difficulty making friends at school, was often bullied, and was excluded from parties and celebrations. Despite seeing many doctors, they gave him different diagnoses without clear answers. Could his social difficulties lead to a moment of loss of control? Tracy told the police that she had always feared Dustin. She felt extremely unsafe, even around her husband, and she tried to avoid any encounters with Dustin. Under no circumstances would she let him be alone with the children because she believed he would harm them. Mona was shocked by these allegations. She had no idea that Tracy was facing such serious issues with her son. To Mona, everything seemed just the opposite. The police examined the crime scene and concluded that there was no clear motive for the violent attack. They suggested that it could only make sense if it had been planned as a robbery. The Tracy house contained many valuables, leading Tracy to believe that the young criminals aimed to steal cash or one of Michael's collectible weapons. However, the criminals' behavior did not resemble that of typical robbers. They ignored money and jewelry that were easily visible, and instead of trying to steal from Tracy while she was unconscious after being strangled, they focused solely on inflicting violence without any intent to sexually assault her. The police quickly identified a possible motive linked to Tracy and her husband. Not long before the home invasion, Tracy had experienced a traumatic incident. She was sexually assaulted by a dentist while under anesthesia. She regained consciousness during the assault, and the dentist attempted to silence her by promising to help her with her sexual problems and offering her $150,000 in compensation if she remained quiet. Tracy confided in her husband about this, and he urged her to report it to the police. Just 2 days after the dentist's attack on her, she was preparing to testify in court against her dentist, whom she was accusing of rape. He was likely the second person to invade her home, intending to silence her so she could not testify against him. However, police determined that the dentist had no connection to Dustin and had a solid alibi. He was at work at the time. Later, the Tracy recalled another individual who might have wanted her dead. His name was John Pittman, Tracy's first husband. They met while studying medicine at Northwestern University in Chicago. John was a fourth-year student interning at Chicago Clinical Hospital, and 19-year-old Tracy was in her first year of radiology. John was very controlling and aggressive, but Tracy was accustomed to such behavior after growing up with a domineering father, so she considered it normal. She married him, and they eventually moved to Denver, Colorado, where she gave birth to a son. As John tried to control every aspect of her life, she thought it was normal. However, over time, their marriage began to deteriorate. Tracy describes how he often abused her, especially during sex. Eventually, she grew tired of the physical violence, and they divorced. After the divorce, a custody battle began to take place. Bert revealed to his mother that his father had harassed him, leading to a contentious custody battle in court. Although there was no concrete evidence of harassment, Tracy was able to convince those present at the trial. Bert then lived with his mother. However, the long-running custody battle, which was still ongoing when the attack occurred, left John Pittman as a suspect. Even young Bert believed his father may have been involved in the attack. The police contacted John's colleagues in Virginia, where he lived, to confirm whether he had an alibi during the time of the crime. They found that he had a solid alibi. He was working at a clinic when the crime occurred. John denied any involvement and there was no evidence against him. At that time, he was a successful plastic surgeon with an excellent reputation. His acquaintances found it hard to believe that John could harm his son or kill his ex-wife, whom he had not been involved with for a long time. However, John had not been cleared yet and remained a suspect. Months passed without any progress in the case, and Tracy grew increasingly anxious. She felt unsafe knowing that the second attacker was still at large, fearing that he might return to take revenge on her. Meanwhile, the police began investigating the new suspect, Tracy's second husband, Michael. Further investigation revealed that their marriage had long since deteriorated, and the emotional connection between them had faded. Some speculated that Michael may have wanted to get rid of Tracy, a theory that received considerable support from those around them. Bert, Tracy's eldest son, revealed a disturbing truth about his stepfather. The man was very strict and often punished Bert severely for even minor infractions. Meanwhile, Tracy did not address her husband's aggressive behavior or protect her children. It is possible that Tracy had become accustomed to this type of treatment from a young age and did not realize it was a problem. Michael's behavior was noted by the police during a hospital visit where he visited his surviving relatives. His reaction seemed to be genuine shock at finding them still alive, suggesting that this outcome was not what he had wanted. Michael had a strong alibi. He was in another city on business. This was confirmed by CCTV footage. He was later given a lie detector test, but failed it and appeared to be hiding something. The police suspected he may have been involved in planning the attack. He did not inform his wife about the failed lie detector test. Tracy eventually discovered the truth about the lie detector test. Tracy became increasingly paranoid, believing that both her husband and his friend were conspiring against her to gain sole custody of their child. She shared her suspicions with the police chief, citing a dream in which Michael mentioned the plot. Tracy believed that her husband was indeed involved in the case. The police began investigating Michael and discovered that his IT business was struggling and he was in large debt. However, the couple held multi-million-dollar life insurance policies, which may have motivated Michael to eliminate Tracy to solve his financial problems. Additionally, he had a close relationship with Dustin, which may have led him to convince the young man to help him. Despite these theories, there was no concrete evidence linking Michael to any wrongdoing. Tracy and Michael's relationship became increasingly strained. In 2004, 3 years after the attack, they divorced. At the time, police had not found enough evidence to arrest Michael. After the divorce, Tracy and her children moved away. She changed her home, her job, and even her name to escape and protect herself from potential threats. Meanwhile, her friend Mona also moved to another city with her daughters. The tragedy not only affected Dustin's life, but also led to the death of his father a year later. On Thanksgiving Day 2002, Dustin's father chose to end his life at Dustin's grave. The father was devastated by his son's death, especially because of the judgmental looks from others who viewed Dustin as a dangerous criminal. Meanwhile, Mona, devastated by a series of losses, could not stop questioning what really happened the day her son arrived at Tracy's house. Mona refused to believe that he intended to hurt the people he admired. Michael's family was important to Dustin. He struggled with social interactions and felt safe and grateful to be with Michael, who understood him. The Mona intended to file a wrongful death lawsuit against Tracy Roberts to hold her accountable for Dustin's death and to uncover what happened that night. Mona lawyers launched their own investigation and discovered inconsistencies in Tracy's repeated accounts of the event. In one version, she claimed to have recognized Dustin immediately, while in another, she said she only learned his identity later. Additionally, she described shooting from different positions in her various retellings. Due to these discrepancies and the confusion surrounding the details, the lawyers concluded that her story was fabricated. On the day of the murder, Mona was busy shopping for Christmas. She called home to check if Dustin was up yet, as he had an important meeting scheduled. Her daughter answered and said that Dustin had left. She was relieved that Dustin was awake and going about his business. Later, Mona's nephew called to inform her that something had happened at Tracy's house. Mona rushed over, suspecting that Tracy and Michael had hurt each other, but she could not fathom that her son had been murdered. Mona mentioned that the day before the murder, Tracy had invited her son to her house to ask for help with something. Mona believed that this was Tracy's way of luring Dustin into a trap. She believed that Tracy was hiding something. However, no one paid attention to Mona's testimony until 7 years after the Roberts burglary. The same investigative team revisited the case and began to suspect that Tracy might not be the hero protecting her son, but a potential killer. There was no sign of forced entry or attempted robbery in the house. How could two people have broken in without leaving any evidence? Dustin had 9 gunshot wounds, indicating he had been shot at close range with no chance of survival, and there was no evidence of a second attack. The police decided to speak with Tracy's first husband, John. He described her as a monster, revealing that she had had bouts of aggression, including one time when she pointed a gun at him while threatening violence. She eventually fired a shot into the ceiling, prompting him to call the police. John discovered that Tracy was both aggressive and unfaithful. She drained their bank accounts. He even hired a private detective because he suspected she was cheating, and the detective confirmed that several of Tracy's lovers left their home while John was at work. Eventually, John filed for divorce because he began to fear Tracy. Concerned about their son growing up in such a toxic environment with an unstable mother, he fought for custody. This enraged Tracy, who tried to turn their son against John. A dentist was accused of raping Tracy during a dental appointment, but he claimed that she had been harassing him for a long time and was willing to prove it. His practice was equipped with cameras and the recordings supported his claim. It was revealed that Tracy, upon learning of this, had withdrawn her complaint against the dentist the day before the incident. Tracy's second husband, Michael, who she accused of being abusive and harassing her, denied all her allegations to police. He said Tracy was unfaithful. Michael claimed that he put up with these problems for the sake of his children but eventually decided to divorce her. He described himself as a strict father who never abused his wife and children and claimed that Tracy turned the children against him after their divorce. After the divorce, Michael moved to California to focus on his business. The Tracy seemed to slander everyone around her, presenting herself as a victim of abuse from the men in her life. However, the reality was quite the opposite. Police believed that her account of the events from December 13, 2001, was just another lie fabricated by Tracy. The police wanted to meet with Burt to gather more information, but Tracy not only moved to another state and changed her personal information, she also frequently changed her contact information. The police had to thoroughly review the entire list of evidence again. One significant item was an old computer discovered in the back seat of Dustin's car. Tracy believed this computer was crucial evidence in the robbery because it belonged to her husband. However, it was puzzling why Dustin would steal it when there were more valuable and easier to take items available in the house. Additionally, a pink notebook was found in which Dustin had written plans for the murder shortly before his death. The notes indicated that his mission included killing Tracy Roberts, and surprisingly, the person who ordered the assassination was Tracy's first husband, John. However, there was a strange detail in these notes. They contained so many specific details about events that Dustin could not have known before the attack, yet they were written in his own handwriting. It seemed that Dustin had written them under duress, possibly under threat. Dustin's mother did not recognize the pink notebook, which seemed more suited for a woman. Dustin disliked this color and would never have purchased such a notebook. He never kept diaries, and the only content in this notebook was a crime plan, which appeared unusual. It looked brand new and seemed to have been used only once for those notes. It suggested that Tracy might have given the notebook to someone to stage a crime. The latest investigation revealed that Dustin was not the attacker but Tracy's victim. It was also revealed that Tracy had been facing problems in her new town in Nebraska, where she had recently moved. She was charged with falsifying documents and false identity. 10 years after the murder, the police discovered the truth. On July 27, 2011, the police arrested Tracy. The memories of a friend who had helped Tracy clean out her house provided vital information. The friend knew about a notebook containing Dustin's confession. The police discovered that all of these statements had been recorded at Tracy's request. Police found no signs of an attack in the house. The wounds to her neck were self-inflicted, as evidenced by minor scratches that were not life-threatening. The claim that Dustin had struggled to stand up after being shot multiple times was clearly implausible. Forensic experts analyzed crime scene photographs and determined, based on blood spatter, that Dustin was still lying on the floor, with all the shots coming from above. This contradicted Tracy's version of events. The defense argued that Tracy was simply trying to protect her child. They said much of the evidence against her was circumstantial. The defense relied heavily on the testimony of Tracy's eldest son, Bert. He claimed that he heard men screaming and saw someone dragging his mother out the door. Bert also confirmed that the attacker told his mother that she was dead and warned that he would be next. He then saw a young man with a gunshot wound trying to get up, as his mother had described. However, the reliability of Bert's testimony has been questioned. Tracy initially mentioned that the nursery door was closed at the time, preventing Bert from witnessing the incident. The prosecution argued that Bert's account may have been influenced by his mother. The prosecution argued that Tracy killed Dustin to frame her husband, hoping to gain sole custody of their children and access to his money. This was considered the primary motive for the crime. That same day, Tracy confronted Dustin at gunpoint, forced him to write in a notebook, and then shot him. She then staged a scene to make it look like she had been attacked, inflicting minor injuries on herself and leaving a notebook and a computer in Dustin's car. A forensic expert later confirmed that her injuries were inconsistent with her being unconscious, further casting doubt on her testimony. After reviewing the evidence, the jury found Tracy Roberts guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Tracy cried in court when she heard the verdict, but many people did not believe her tears, as they did not seem genuine. Again, she seemed to be acting. The situation was especially difficult for Bert, who was convinced that his mother had saved the lives of all her children that night and had been wrongly imprisoned. He continued to visit and support her. Years later, Tracy's second husband, Michael, with the approval of the guardianship agency, took the children back to Australia with his new wife. Tracy maintains her innocence and is currently serving her sentence at a women's correctional facility in Iowa. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Kelly Lane. Kelly Lane was an Australian beauty and a champion water polo athlete. Despite her success, she faced a series of unfortunate events that led to tragedy, leaving many unanswered questions about her story. Born in 1975, Kelly grew up in a sports-oriented family. Her father, originally known as Bim, later became a police officer named Robert Lane. Her mother, Sandra, worked in a medical institution and coached water polo. Kelly had a brother named Morgan. The family was affluent and lived in a prestigious area of Sydney, Australia. Kelly was a golden child, attending Lee High School and later Mayclara. After graduating, she enrolled at the University of Newcastle to study art and then attended the Australian College of Physical Education. During this time, she started her sports career, working as a physical education teacher and coach at a girls' high school. Following in her mother's footsteps, Kelly became a highly skilled water polo player, which made her famous in her city. Her parents were proud of her accomplishments and were themselves respected professionals. Kelly took part in almost all public events, especially sports-related ones, and had a bright future ahead. Her mother was both her coach and manager, dedicating a lot of time to Kelly's career. Initially, Sandra personally handled her daughter's training, but later Kelly was coached by a more experienced trainer. Kelly dedicated herself completely to sports. Her parents were supportive and actively helped her progress in her chosen path. Despite her hectic schedule, Kelly was calm and reserved. She had a fit, athletic body and natural beauty, seldom wearing makeup. Her attractiveness and sociable nature made her popular even in high school. In 1992, when she was finishing her studies, Kelly met Aaron. They had a lot in common and their relationship developed into a romance. At the age of 17, she unexpectedly became pregnant while still in school and, Not ready to become a mother, she chose to have an abortion. Erin supported her decision. In order to continue her athletic career, Kelly kept her pregnancy and abortion a secret, never telling her parents. By early 1994, Kelly's relationship with Erin ended due to frequent arguments. She then began an affair with a married man and became pregnant at 19, despite using contraception. She did not plan to keep the child and decided to have another abortion. This decision was made in secret, as the father did not want the child either. Kelly sought a different clinic for more confidentiality but was initially refused because the pregnancy was too advanced for a safe procedure. She had to convince the doctors to perform the surgery and they finally agreed. At that time, she was in her 20th week of pregnancy. Remarkably, during 5 months of intense training, no one noticed her condition because athletes often endure challenging situations. Kelly, determined to participate in the Olympic Games, did not show weakness or ask for special treatment. Her athleticism helped her maintain a fit appearance, aided by loose clothing. Sometimes, a woman's body structure can conceal a pregnancy until later stages, as was the case with Kelly. Although the abortion was traumatic, she felt relieved to have resolved the situation and continued with her life, pursuing sports and forming new relationships. In 1995, Kelly started dating a new boyfriend named Duncan, and they were together until 1998. Duncan professed his deep love for Kelly and expressed a desire to marry her. Both were athletes who enjoyed parties and entertainment. During this time, Kelly became pregnant again with an unwanted child. After her previous traumatic abortion, she was reluctant to seek medical help. Despite being pregnant, Kelly still chose to compete in sports and compete in the World Cup. Practicing a demanding sport like water polo while pregnant is no easy feat, yet Kelly managed it. Despite the intense physical demands, no one noticed the strain she was under, not even her boyfriend on the team, as Kelly kept her pregnancy a secret. To maintain her privacy, she wore a towel to the pool and only removed it before entering the water, avoiding showing her figure in a swimsuit by wearing loose clothing. Her boyfriend remained unaware but later recalled that she never let him touch her stomach and had limited contact with him. Around the 7th month of her pregnancy, an unexpected situation occurred. During practice, a swimmer in the water next to Kelly noticed her protruding belly and suspected that she might be pregnant. The swimmer shared her suspicions with her coach. Kelly's coach then asked her about it. Kelly firmly denied being pregnant, and the coach, upon seeing her small belly, was reassured. Kelly continued to lie, fearing that it would ruin her athletic career. Kelly was participating in a local water polo event. During the event, she felt unwell and was taken to hospital on a stretcher, where she gave birth to a baby girl. She experienced severe contractions, which likely began during the competition. After the birth, Kelly abandoned the baby, who was later adopted. She even named another man as the father. Despite this, Kelly was forced to stay in the hospital with the baby until she was discharged. She did not inform her family about the birth, telling her parents that she was with friends, which they believed. No one was worried about her, allowing her to carry out her plan. On her birthday, she managed to leave the hospital to have a drink with friends. She became intoxicated. After returning from the party, at the beginning of the year, Kelly began working as a teacher at a private school. She also continued her water polo career, representing Australia at the World Championships in Canada. Kelly performed well and won a silver medal. When Kelly turned 21, she became pregnant again. Despite being pregnant, Kelly maintained a romantic relationship with Duncan, who was deeply in love and considering marriage. However, she chose to keep her pregnancy a secret from her family, friends, and Duncan, even though they had been together for a long time and he was eager to marry her. Throughout her pregnancy, Kelly did not show any physical signs. She remained slim and did not alter her lifestyle. She regularly consumed alcohol, attended parties, engaged in intimate relationships, and continued to exercise vigorously, just as she always had. In a small suburb where everyone knew each other, Kelly faced the challenge of being the subject of gossip during her pregnancies. Many people envied her and suspected something was wrong, fueling rumors about her condition. This suspicion was partly due to changes in her behavior, like wearing towels or loose-fitting clothes. While those close to her didn't notice anything unusual, some outsiders found it odd. Regardless, Kelly consistently denied any rumors about being pregnant, insisting she was fine, and no one challenged her assertions, as there was no proof to suggest otherwise. In April 1996, Kelly's relationship with Duncan began to deteriorate. He moved to a different area and bought a house, creating distance between them. Later, Kelly discovered that he had cheated on her with one of the athletes on her team. Although this betrayal hurt her, Kelly chose to forgive him and worked to save their relationship. On September 12, in the year 1996, Kelly secretly gave birth to her second daughter, whom she named Tegan. She had informed her relatives that she would be spending the weekend with friends, but instead, she went to the hospital to give birth. Kelly chose a hospital far from home, reducing the risk of encountering someone she knew. For the first time during her pregnancy, she used her real name and date of birth at the hospital. She even considered keeping the baby. However, she later changed her address and phone number. At the time, it was relatively easy to hide or change personal information. Australians had access to free health care, including anonymous services if needed. Unlike her previous children, baby Tegan felt the warmth of her mother, indicating that a bond had formed between them. Kelly spent time with her daughter, breastfeeding, bathing and sleeping together. During her labor, she consulted with doctors about her future as a mother. Unlike before, she tried to avoid or abandon her child. Just 2 days after giving birth, Kelly and her daughter were discharged from hospital. However, she missed an important test required in Australia, which involves taking blood from the baby's heel for newborn screening. The early discharge was necessary because of a lack of beds in the hospital. Both Kelly and her daughter felt well and were quickly discharged to make room for other patients. On the day she was discharged from the hospital, Kelly left home between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., and no one saw the baby again. She returned to her parents' house around 3 p.m. without her daughter. Since no one knew she had given birth, there were no suspicions or questions about her absence. That evening, she met her boyfriend and went out to a family wedding where she acted normally as if nothing had happened. Her behavior raised no concerns among her relatives. For the next 10 years, no one suspected the existence of Tegan. The baby had vanished during the time between leaving the hospital and arriving at her parents' home. Since only Kelly and the doctors were aware of the baby's existence, no one searched for Tegan. The doctors did not follow up on the baby's fate, so the information remained hidden. At the end of 1998, Kelly became pregnant again due to her carelessness. By the time she discovered her pregnancy, she had already broken up with her boyfriend, Duncan. This time, she decided not to tell anyone and wanted to have an abortion. In early February 1999, she visited the new abortion clinic in Queensland. However, her request for an abortion was denied because she arrived at the clinic in the 25th week of her pregnancy, which was too late for the procedure. She faced similar refusals at other clinics, leaving her with no choice but to give birth. Kelly secretly gave birth in the hospital and immediately put the baby up for adoption. By that time, the laws regarding adoption had changed, making the process more complicated. She spoke briefly with a social worker about her lack of documents. Kelly lied, claiming it was her first birth, and provided her real name but gave false information about her contact details and address. She also stated that she did not know who the child's father was. Because of the incorrect information she provided, the social worker's job became much more difficult. When the organization that assists new mothers reviewed her case, they realized they had been misled and that this was not Kelly's first birth. They began searching for her to discuss the situation, as they lacked the necessary information to legally finalize the adoption of the child. The adoption process in the country has changed significantly, but Kelly was not aware of this. Consequently, the social workers handling the adoption paperwork performed a thorough background check on the child's biological mother. As they investigated her history and life, they uncovered numerous inconsistencies and falsehoods. They investigated Kelly's situation and found that she likely had a daughter named Tegan, whom she had given birth to several years earlier. Kelly did not abandon Tegan, she left the hospital with her. However, the only information available was that Tegan was born in a hospital near Bern. After leaving the hospital, there was no communication from Kelly. She never Tegan took for checkups, vaccinations, or visits to the pediatrician. For 3 years, there were no updates about the child, and Kelly's biological mother denied that Kelly had ever given birth. This situation raised alarms, leading social services employees to reach out to Kelly's mother. She confidently insisted that they were mistaken and claimed she had no grandchildren. However, the social workers suspected something was wrong and contacted the police, who began their investigation. Meanwhile, Kelly went about her life, unaware that the police were getting closer to uncovering her secrets. In 2000, on her 25th birthday, it was revealed that she was pregnant again, and this time she chose to keep the child. For the first time, she shared this news with her family and boyfriend. This decision was likely influenced by Kelly's sports career, as she was aging and had stopped competing. Kelly tried to work as a coach and present herself as a respectable mother, which was beneficial for her at that time. However, she was unaware that the investigation into the disappearance of baby Tegan was intensifying. Later, police reached out to her regarding her previous pregnancies, and Kelly was summoned for questioning. This time, she could not evade it, as police had already gathered extensive information about her. Kelly admitted to 5 pregnancies, including those that were terminated, between the ages of 17 and 24. She had 2 abortions and gave birth to 3 children, all without her family's knowledge. She stated that Tegan was born from a secret relationship with an older man named Andrew Morris. Kelly met Andrew on Vis Beach Street, where he worked in finance, and they connected in a bar. Their relationship was short-lived. When Kelly discovered she was pregnant and shared the news with Andrew, he was excited and awaited the birth. She claimed that after the baby was born, Andrew took Tegan but did not clarify where they would live. Kelly was unable to provide further details about Andrew. Nevertheless, a portrait was created based on her description for the investigation. The police began by checking their records, with the initial goal of finding the baby's father, Andrew, to find out where the child was. The police were stumped because they could not find any men matching Kelly's description. The potential matches were either too young or too old, and no one by that name lived on Bibbich Street, which cast doubt on Kelly's story. They eventually discovered an Andrew Morris, who had previously been in a relationship with Kelly, but that was years before her child was born. When the police contacted him, he confirmed that he had not seen Kelly for a long time and did not have any children with her. He had moved away a long time ago and had never lived at the address Kelly had provided. A month later, the investigation hit a temporary pause because there were no new leads on the child. However, a new police took over the case, and Kelly was called in for questioning again. She recounted the same story she had shared with the previous police, but some details had changed, and which the new police noticed. For instance, the father's last name had suddenly shifted from Andrew Morris to Andrew Norris. With a friendly smile, Kelly claimed she might have made a mistake during the earlier questioning and now remembered the correct last name, which confused the police. They directly asked her if she had killed her daughter. Kelly was surprised and denied it, asking to stop the audio recording of the interrogation. She was clearly distressed, mainly worried about how discussing her pregnancy might impact her career. However, there wasn't enough evidence to charge her, so the Kelly was released, and the investigation continued. Police, after considerable effort, were unable to locate Andrew Norris. However, they were unable to find any men matching Kelly's description, nor were there any children resembling Tegan enrolled in schools or kindergartens in the Minley area or surrounding communities. Police sifted through some 86,000 birth records in an attempt to identify potential adoptive parents for the child, but they found no new leads. Despite Kelly's increasing dishonesty, she continued to mislead the police. She said she saw Tegan 1-year-old in mid-1997, but no one could confirm her claim. Despite this, the police remained optimistic and continued their investigation. They contacted Kelly's ex-boyfriend, Duncan, as her relationship with him coincided with the clandestine relationship that led to Tegan's birth. Duncan maintains that he did not know about Kelly's affair. Duncan suspected that Kelly was pregnant, but she never mentioned it to him. He noticed that she never let him touch her belly, though he didn't think much of it at the time. They lived apart and only saw each other occasionally. He willingly agreed to provide his DNA for testing. The results showed that he was not the biological father of Kelly's first or third child, as both were adopted by other families. Unfortunately, the police did not have DNA samples from the missing baby, so they couldn't confirm if Duncan was the father of Tegan. Connecting all the data to confirm Tegan's existence was a challenge because information about the mother and baby was incomplete and inaccurate, making the investigation even more difficult. While the police worked to solve the mystery and find the Tegan, Kelly continued her life without concern. During this time, rumors spread around town that Kelly had multiple abortions, had children, and abandoned them. These rumors damaged her coaching career and damaged her reputation. Kelly eventually gave birth to a baby girl, whom she chose to keep, and she introduced her to all her relatives. In 2004, to help restore her reputation, she married the father of her fourth child. The police were unable to get any information about Tegan's father, Andrew Norris. Kelly frequently changed her story, which caused the police to lose confidence in her. The case stalled and they offered Kelly a deal. If she pleaded guilty to the child's murder and revealed where the body was buried, she would not face any charges and could avoid jail time. Despite these terms, Kelly maintained her innocence, claiming that she did not kill the child. She claimed that the child was still alive and suggested that both the child's and the father's names may have been changed, or that they may have left the country and are now untraceable. She believed that this was the reason why the police had been unable to locate them. The police found the scenario unlikely. Why would Andrew change both his name and Tegan's if he hadn't kidnapped her? He could have simply taken his daughter away from her mother and updated the necessary paperwork, enrolling her in a nursery, school, or hospital. Why did he remain in hiding for so many years? There is no clear reason for this. The situation was further complicated by a ban on sharing information about the case, which prevented police from seeking help from the media or the public. When Kelly declined a plea bargain and police failed to investigate for years, they concluded that Tegan was dead and the case was treated as a murder. They also deemed Andrew to be a fictitious person. However, there was no solid evidence supporting these claims. Despite the absence of direct evidence or testimony against Kelly, she was charged with Tegan's murder on November 17, 2009. Kelly maintained her innocence, and the case was referred to court. The prosecution claims that Tegan's murder occurred on September 14, 1996, the day Kelly was discharged from the hospital. Shortly after leaving, the baby went missing. The Kelly had very little time to commit the crime and dispose of the body. To protect her social status and image, Kelly hid her pregnancy and discarded the baby. She returned home the same day as if nothing had happened, met her boyfriend, and went to celebrate a relative's wedding. During the trial, Kelly maintained her innocence. Her first boyfriend, Aaron, supported her and they rekindled their relationship after her divorce. He shared that it was difficult for them to decide to terminate her pregnancy the first time, and it was a difficult healing process for Kelly, leading him to believe that she was not capable of murder. However, he did not know that she later had another abortion and gave birth to the children she abandoned. In front of the jury, the prosecutor had no concrete evidence, witnesses, or bodies. Only circumstantial evidence against her. Prosecutors described Kelly as a dangerous, manipulative person who would do anything to get what she wanted. Her ability to abandon her children raised suspicions about her capacity to kill. A psychiatrist confirmed that Kelly displayed narcissistic traits and was adept at playing the victim. The trial lasted 4 months and was complicated. Despite the uncertainty of the indictment, the jury found Kelly Lane guilty, not of murdering Tegan, but of perjury. The verdict was handed down on December 13, 2010. The trial reconvened on April 15, 2011, when Kelly confessed to killing Tegan. She was sentenced to 18 years in prison. As a mother unable to care for her many children, she began her sentence in prison, with all of her appeals being rejected. During the trial, Kelly displayed no emotions, appearing indifferent to her baby's fate, which likely influenced the jury's decision. After entering prison, she broke up with Aaron but continued to send him love letters. Meanwhile, Aaron had begun dating someone else. This new girlfriend requested in a reply letter that Kelly stop contacting them, which angered Kelly. In response, she sent letters to Aaron's new girlfriend and asked her friends to harass her. Kelly's cellmates joined in, insulting Aaron's new girlfriend on social media. The woman, tired of being harassed, decided to end her relationship with Aaron. Kelly, 48, is currently serving a prison sentence but will soon be eligible for parole. She maintains her innocence and insists that her daughter is still alive. Kelly's parents fully support her and believe the court's decision was unfair due to a lack of evidence linking Kelly to the child. In an interview, Kelly Lane revealed that she hid her pregnancy to avoid embarrassing her parents. She said that she had taken birth control pills incorrectly multiple times, leading to unwanted pregnancies. New, alarming information has emerged in connection with the case. On May 12, 2023, a taxi driver contacted the police and provided a tip. He revealed that on the day Kelly was discharged from the hospital, he had picked her and her baby up. During the ride home, Kelly asked him to stop the car. She then got out and left the baby on the side of the road. Although the driver testified to this, he did nothing at the time. After dropping Kelly off at home, he was racked with guilt and decided to go back to check on the baby. When he arrived, he saw a woman who said she would take care of the baby, but he left without any information about her. The police attempted to verify this account, but they could not find any confirmation or anyone else who had seen the woman. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Scarlett Keeling. Scarlett Keeling was born in July 1992 in Great Britain. Her mother, Fiona, has 9 children from 5 different men. However, none of the men among them care about the lives of Fiona and children. The family relied primarily on state benefits for support, and Fiona also worked part-time. The children were homeschooled and lived in a poor area of Devon, UK. They live in a small house and some trailers. Fiona's first child was a boy named Hallandale Moose, who was 19 years old. Next is Silas, 17 years old, and then Scarlett, 15 years old. These 3 children were from Richard Keeling, who was of Levitsa descent and worked in a construction company. When Fiona and Richard's relationship began, they lived near each other in Hartford, but they separated shortly after Scarlett's birth. Two girls, Marilyn and Kitty, were born a little over a year apart. At the time of the tragedy, Marilyn was 13 years old and Kitty was 12. Their father, Chris Osborne, was a trader. However, Fiona and Chris' relationship quickly ended. After them, two more children were born, AK and Kay, who was 9 at the time of the tragedy. Their biological father was Paul, a market trader. He met Fiona while she was trading in London. At that time, she was selling army equipment. Her relationship with Paul was brief, but it was he who took her to the Devon area. Devon has more spacious properties, suitable for Fiona's large family. She hoped to create a better environment for her children. However, her relationship with Paul quickly began to deteriorate after the move. They had frequent disagreements and serious conflicts, yet they continued living together to avoid paying rent. Eventually, they were evicted, which marked the end of their relationship. During this time, Fiona met Adam Foster, a contractor who specialized in flooring. He was the father of her last two children, Trinity and Aurora. They were born a year apart. But Fiona and Adam's relationship didn't last long. The large family had to squeeze into a small apartment provided by the state. Fiona found herself alone and had to take care of 9 children by herself. Most of the time, she homeschooled them. However, sometimes they start attending public schools when their family circumstances become more favorable. During this period, the Keeling family was described as decent and polite, showing no signs that their mother mistreated them. As the teenagers grew up, their living conditions were challenging. Fiona did her best to provide for them, but raising 9 children on her own was nearly impossible. She also faced problems with alcohol and substance addiction, although she tried to protect her children from these harmful habits. Unfortunately, they lived in marginal areas where drug use was common, and this environment negatively influenced her children. Scarlett grows up and gradually becomes interested in the more rebellious aspects of life. Fiona was aware that Scarlett had smoked weed several times. Some of Scarlett's friends have mentioned that she has been attending parties with untrustworthy friends. She frequently smoked and drank alcohol. Her mother, Fiona, noted that she appeared older than her age. By 14, she had started dating boys. Upon discovering this, Fiona advised that she should buy birth control pills, as Fiona wanted to protect her children from potential troubles and early pregnancies. Scarlett was described by her relatives as an active and cheerful girl who was beautiful and drew a lot of attention. She had a passion for horses and swimming. She also dreamed of joining a group of artists to pursue creative work. In 2006, Fiona began a relationship with Rob Clark, a man who was wealthier than her previous partners. A year later, they started planning a trip to India with the children, specifically to the famous resort of Goa, which they had long wanted to visit. Rob had been to Goa many times and loved it. For Fiona, this trip will be very interesting, as she had never traveled outside the UK. The trip promised to be a significant experience for the entire family. However, she hesitated for a long time. She worried not only about the trip but also about the large amount of money that needs to be spent. Her eldest son chose to remain in Britain due to document issues. She didn't want to rely entirely on Rob, so she decided to contribute to the trip costs herself. She used her savings, sold some belongings, and also drew from her benefits. After much preparation, packing, and financial planning, the family was finally ready and very excited about their upcoming adventure. The trip started in November 2007. Rob, Fiona, and 8 children visited Anjuna in Goa. This was the first destination on their itinerary. Anjuna is a peaceful coastal town known for its beautiful beaches and rich hippie culture. The area also hosts large parties at numerous clubs, creating a relaxed atmosphere with plenty of entertainment options. At first, they enjoyed the warm weather, the ocean, and the laid-back lifestyle. However, by early February, they grew tired of the constant noise and parties in Anjuna and wanted to explore other regions of India. Everyone agreed to move on, except for Scarlett. During her time in Anjuna, she met Julio Lobo, a local guide, who organized excursions. Then, they quickly became a friend. She helped promote his activities by distributing flyers and accompanied him on trips as an assistant. She even considered staying behind to continue this work and enjoy her time on the beach, but Fiona disagreed with her decision. Nevertheless, Scarlett knew how to persuade Fiona that this would be a positive experience. She would learn to be independent, enjoy a break, and work to earn some money. Fiona then agreed to let her stay with her friend Julio. She promised to attend fewer parties and avoid going out alone at night. With this resolved, Fiona, Rob, and the 7 other children set off on a tour to different cities. In fact, India is often ranked as one of the most dangerous countries. Numerous crimes occur here, especially against women, making it very risky for a girl to be alone. In early February 2008, the Keeling family was faced with a tragic incident. In mid-February, their eldest son, 19 years old Hallandale, was hit by a car while crossing the street in the UK. He was taken to the hospital with serious injuries. Upon hearing the news, Fiona and the rest of the Keeling family began making plans to return home to support him. On February 17th, Scarlett met with her family and began packing. During this time, she had expressed a desire to attend a party for St. Lee's Day. Although her mother was against it, but she managed to persuade her to let her go. She told her mother she would return by midnight after saying goodbye to her friends. After her mother agreed, she left the house with Julio. Her mother, unaware that this would be the last time she would see her daughter and that the party would lead to a tragic outcome. Until that moment, Scarlett's life on the coast followed a typical daily routine. She distributed leaflets for Julio and sometimes acted as his guide. She also served food and worked part-time on the beach. In the evenings, the party scene began. The 15-year-old girl, Scarlett, having earned some money, went out to enjoy herself. She attended the party until midnight, then she went back to Julio's aunt's house, where he was living. She quickly adapted to this lively lifestyle. She seemed happy and didn't want to leave. However, her plans changed when she realized her older brother, Hallandale, needed help. She couldn't abandon him in his time of trouble, so she decided to return to her family. Despite this, she chose to enjoy one last night out. Julio, feeling tired and unwell, decided to stay home. But Scarlett went out with Julio's 16-year-old sister and their friend Ruby for one final party before their vacation ended. Scarlett admitted to having a romantic relationship with Julio. He had even bought her a motorcycle. This revelation surprised Ruby, especially since Scarlett had just turned 15 and Julio was 10 years older. They visited a local bar and then moved to several other places, drinking moderately at each one. After midnight, they planned to head home. Scarlett, however, intended to return to her family rather than stay at Ruby's house, as her family had already come back for her. They chatted a bit longer and say goodbye, promising to keep in touch after Scarlett returned to Great Britain. Scarlett also planned to visit the resort again in the future to see her friends. Unfortunately, this plan was never realized, as no one ever saw her alive again. Scarlett never returned home, and at that time, no one was looking for her. Her mother, Fiona, thought she would return to Julio in the morning. However, she was still missing the next day. On February 18, 2008, the morning after the party, passers-by discovered the half-naked body of a girl on the beach. They quickly notified the police, who identified the deceased as a 15-year-old girl. Fiona has been facing depression because of the health situation of her son, Hallandale. Overwhelmed with horror, Fiona regained her composure and rushed to the scene of the tragedy. During the initial investigation, police stated that the body was found floating in the water, leading them to conclude that the cause of death was accidental drowning. However, there were clear signs of violence and abuse on the body. Despite this evidence, law enforcement in India believed she had gotten drunk on the beach, fallen asleep, and drowned. Naturally, Fiona protested this conclusion and was determined to seek justice. Fiona spent weeks searching for answers to prompt an investigation and review of the case. She even took photographs of Scarlett's body at the morgue to record evidence, fearing that the incident would be covered up. The police insisted it was an accident and seemed more focused on minimizing the incident to avoid scaring off tourists and damaging the resort's reputation. Fiona believes that the numerous bruises and severe injuries on Scarlett's body indicate that she died as a result of violence. She was also certain that her daughter had been raped. However, the investigators explained the missing clothing by saying it had been washed away by the waves. The police attributed the bruises on Scarlett's head to her hitting rocks underwater. It seemed the authorities had not thoroughly looked for her belongings. After speaking with several witnesses and examining the area where Scarlett was found, Fiona surprisingly discovered evidence that the police had overlooked. Specifically, she found several pieces of Scarlett's clothing hidden in the bushes nearby on the beach. The second investigation, along with a toxicology test, took place a month after Scarlett's death. By the end of the year, analysis showed that her system contained alcohol and drugs. Furthermore, she had over 50 violent injuries, including cuts and bruises, indicating a violent cause of death. The amount of water found in her lungs was too low to conclude that she died by drowning. It seemed more likely that the water entered her lungs after death, possibly while attempts were made to dispose of her body. A detailed toxicology analysis of the blood revealed the presence of both mild and severe prohibited substances. This makes one wonder how these substances could have entered her body if, according to relatives, she only smoked. Interviews with witnesses helped investigators piece together the incident of that tragic night when Scarlett left her friend Ruby. They spoke to a witness named Mike. He was from London and was on holiday in Goa. He reported seeing Scarlett around 3 a.m. as she entered the bar. She was very drunk, walked unsteadily, and incoherent speech. She fell in front of the entrance, and others helped her get up. She quickly attracted the attention of several men, but the bar owner prevented anyone from approaching her. Later, she went to the back of the kitchen, and she spoke with two Indian men for about an hour. Mike believed she knew them, and he suspected that she was drinking and possibly using drugs during that time. Mike is aware that this beach is dangerous because of the high number of sexual assaults and the increase in gang activity. Although drug sales were illegal, drugs were readily available in many places. A witness reported seeing Scarlett leave the bar with a local man around 4:30 a.m. When Mike left the bar about half an hour later, he noticed the man pulling Scarlett into the bushes. Since she did not resist or scream, Mike assumed they were consenting to have sex, so he did not intervene and left the scene. Based on this information, the police arrested two employees of the bar, Samson D'Souza and Solani Plato Carvalho, on March 2, 2008, on suspicion of murder. On June 5, the case was handed over to the Central Bureau of Investigation. Samson and Solani were charged with murder, rape, drug use, and cruelty to a minor. Additional charges for attempting to destroy evidence were later added. Unfortunately, the Indian justice system moved slowly, and the trial in Goa was not scheduled until March 2010. 2 years later. During this time, preparations for the trial continued, and law enforcement interviewed 72 witnesses. However, just days before the trial was set to begin, the case was unexpectedly suspended. Samson and Solanyi still maintain that they had nothing to do with Scarlett's death, and there is currently no direct evidence against them. All evidence has been destroyed. The prosecutor's office to continue contacting witnesses. By 2013, they had selected 30 individuals who could help clarify the timeline of incident from that tragic night. The most important witness in this case is Mike, who witnessed the violence against Scarlett, but he did not realize it was happening against her will. Unfortunately, in April 2012, he refused to return to testify in court. Later, he told the media that he was afraid to come back to the country where the crime occurred because he feared for his safety, he believing that local gangs were involved. There were rumors that Mike had been threatened, and the Indian authorities even opened a criminal case against him regarding what he witnessed that night. However, his testimony was deemed unreliable. Fiona was shocked by Mike's behavior and labeled him a coward. Fiona believed that he could have saved Scarlett when he saw her being dragged into the bushes or helped bring the perpetrators to justice. However, he chose not to do so. She was so heartbroken, she even tried to meet Mike in England and take a video as evidence in court, but her efforts were unsuccessful. The police appear to be obstructing the pursuit of justice. They are still looking for reasons to blame Scarlett for the death. For instance, they pointed to her diary entries where she expressed her desire to leave Anjuna and return home. The detectives interpreted this as a sign of depression, hinting that she is trying to stay away from life. This thing seemed aimed at closing the case, despite the fact that Scarlett had never shown any signs of mental health issues or intent to end her life. The hearings were delayed for 8 years, during which Fiona was constantly in the media spotlight. She had to address numerous rumors and gossip. On September 23, 2016, Samson and Solanyi were acquitted due to insufficient evidence. Fiona was present during the sentencing and was devastated by the court's decision. After years of waiting, Samson and Solanyi were found not guilty. Fiona accused the police of corruption and she planned to take the case to higher courts. She vowed to keep fighting for justice for her deceased daughter, Scarlett. Attorneys representing Samson and Solanyi argued that from the outset, the Central Bureau of Investigation lacked evidence. They maintained that Scarlett's death was either a voluntary end to her life or an accident. However, the medical evidence that showed she had 52 injuries, most of which she could not have inflicted on herself. The defense claimed that no one had given the girl illegal drugs, rather, she had taken them on her own. Fiona felt a deep sense of injustice. Fiona had to wait 4 years to retrieve Scarlett's body and give her a proper burial. Fiona hoped for a fair court ruling. It felt as though she had lost, and she returned to the UK unexpectedly. In February 2017, the court's decision was appealed. It was demonstrated that the judge failed to comply with the deadlines for hearings. As a result, both suspects, Samson and Solanyi, were once again under investigation. The prosecutor's office in Anjuna began investigating the possibility that Samson and Solanyi deliberately administered drugs and alcohol to Scarlett in an attempt to rape her. During the hearing, a witness stated that at about 3 a.m., she saw Scarlett trying to get a ride, maybe to go home. However, none of the drivers stopped for her. She then went to a beach bar, where Samson and Solanyi had promised to give her a ride after their shift ended at 5 a.m. She decided to wait for them there. It is believed that Samson slipped some narcotic into her drink so that he could easily rape her. Further investigation revealed that Samson was involved in the illegal drug trade on the beach, which meant he was always carrying drugs. During the hearings, his defense lawyer denied that Samson had any involvement in the murder, arguing that it was an accident. The lawyer tried to undermine the prosecution's case, but by then, the police had gathered enough testimony and evidence to implicate Samson in the brutal killing of Scarlett. The defense attorney successfully demonstrated that Solanyi was not guilty. He had a lot of communication with Scarlett that evening, but he left on his scooter before she departed with Samson. Therefore, Solanese charges were dropped, leading to his acquittal. In contrast, Samson faced a more serious outcome. On July 19, 2019, the Supreme Court of Bam convicted Samson D'Souza on 5 charges, including premeditated murder, rape, inciting Scarlett, a teenager, to use hard drugs, and attempting to conceal evidence of murder. Finally, Fiona found justice after nearly 11 years of unremitting efforts. But the outcome was disappointing. Samson received a sentence of only 10 years in prison for his heinous crimes, which many felt was too lenient. Despite this, Fiona was relieved that her efforts were not in vain and that the criminal faced some punishment for his actions. After 11 years, Samson still maintains his innocence, despite the court's decision. Fiona not only sought justice for Scarlett's murder but also faced scrutiny from the courts and child protection services. There was even talk of removing her custody of all her children, labeling her as a neglectful mother. However, this is not the biggest problem for the family. Tragically, before Samson's final trial, Fiona's eldest son, Hallandale Keeling, died after taking a massive dose of morphine. Fiona explained that Hallandale was very close to his younger sister Scarlett and couldn't cope with her rape and murder. He had felt guilty for not traveling to India with his family and believed he could have protected Scarlett. Additionally, he was also very sad that his sister's killer had not been punished for such a long time. Scarlett's reputation was severely damaged because of Rob. He provided information that contradicted Fiona's account. He claimed that by the second month in Goa, Scarlett had spent all her money on drugs and alcohol, forcing him and her family to survive on just one bowl of rice a day. Rob alleged that she used drugs openly in front of her family and that Julio had attempted to forcibly take her just days after they arrived at another beach. He suggested that Fiona allowed this because she could receive money for Scarlett, implying that Fiona had abandoned her. Fiona, however, vigorously rejected these claims, insisting they were mere rumors. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Bodhisattva Potter. This is a story about 2 lovers who met in school and wanted to spend all their free time together, believing their love would last forever. However, they were unaware of how brutally their happiness could be shattered by an unexpected tragedy. Bodhisattva Potter was born in 1991 in Newport Beach, California to Rick Potter and Scherzer. Bodhisattva also has an older brother named Zen. At the time of Bodhisattva and Zen's birth, both parents were in their 30s, and soon after, the family experienced significant career growth. Scherzer is a psychologist who specializes in working with autistic children. Her husband is a psychotherapist and also provides medical consultation. From a young age, Bodhisattva was very intelligent and kind. She was humble and maintained good relationships with everyone around her. All her teachers recognized her intellectual talent. Bodhisattva was also passionate about sports, especially gymnastics and basketball, and she pursued these hobbies and won several awards for her achievements. She also played the piano and sang. Her parents divorced in 1998. At the time, Bodhisattva was 8 years old and living in Newport Beach with her mother and brother. They moved to Hollandale, California, a small desert town with a population of just 6,000, about 2 hours away from their old home. Hollandale is an isolated community with a strong sense of community, with 2 large lakes that make it feel like an oasis in the desert. The town has about 2,000 homes and a well-developed sports and recreation infrastructure, making it feel like a small resort. Bodhisattva was accepted into the Lewis Center, an academy whose curriculum prepares students for entry into top universities. At this time, Zen moved back in with his father, and Bodhisattva stayed with his mother. Despite the distance, the 2 brothers often spent weekends and holidays together. Initially, Bodhisattva and her mother rented a house. In 2004, when she was 12 years old, her mother bought a plot of land near a lake to build her dream home. Bodhisattva was actively involved in the design of the new house, but the construction process took longer than expected due to high costs, so they continued to live in the rented house during this time. On Bodhisattva's 13th birthday, she gradually became more mature. She began to seek independence. Her mother recognized this change and allowed her daughter more freedom. Over time, Bodhisattva became interested in Hollywood and dreamed of becoming a film producer. By 2007, she was in high school and began dating Christopher Cody Thompson, her first love. They were a perfect match, sharing many interests in film, psychology, and architecture, and they enjoyed exploring abandoned buildings together. Cody, born in 1989 in Victorville, California, is 2 years older than Bodhisattva. He has 2 older sisters, Sarah and Katie. Cody is a young man passionate about nature and cycling, and he enjoys restoring custom bikes with his father. At the time he met Bodhisattva, Cody had been working as a teaching assistant for 2 years. People generally describe him as friendly and outgoing. Scherzer was surprised to find out that her daughter had a boyfriend. She felt that it was too early for her daughter to start a relationship and was prepared to intervene if necessary. However, as a psychologist, she realized that she needed to accompany her daughter. She understood that her daughter was growing up and that this journey could not be controlled by restrictions alone. Initially, she considered Cody to be a bit rude, which made her feel uncomfortable. However, as they began to communicate, they found common ground. The Scherzer soon realized that her initial judgment about Cody was wrong. He turned out to be a good person. She felt more secure about her daughter's relationship. Cody graduated from high school and began working for the family business, which helped him become financially independent. He was able to support himself and even buy his own car. He has a passion for exploring old buildings, so he scheduled a visit to an old military bunker that had been repurposed and is now open to the public. Initially, the place attracted many adventure lovers. Over time, it became a popular place for teenage parties. However, the place was not safe. The bunker was often used by addicts to do drugs, and people also came here to practice shooting for themselves. Despite these risks, Cody still wanted to visit because of its uniqueness. Many of his friends knew about it but disapproved of his hobby. However, Cody was attracted to the place and liked the feeling of being in a secret location. In December 2007, after turning 18, Cody planned to take his 16-year-old girlfriend, Bodhi, to the bunker to show her the place they both loved for exploring abandoned sites. Excited by the idea, Bodhi invited her mother to join them. Her mother, Scherzer, objected to the idea. She was shocked by the plans the couple had made. Scherzer warned that the place could be dangerous and forbade Bodhisattva from going there. Although Bodhisattva understood her mother's concerns, her rebellious teenage spirit got the better of her. She did not fully understand the dangers of the place. Despite her mother's warnings, she was determined to explore the bunker. In January 2008, Scherzer was in Newport on business. While her mother was away, Bodhisattva had a few days free to do whatever she wanted. She decided to take the opportunity to visit the shelter. At the time, Cody had planned to take 30 people from the school to the abandoned shelter in the woods. To get to the abandoned building, she asked her friend Andrew to drive her there. He picked Bodhisattva up from home and drove her there on the evening of Friday, January 4, 2008. Bodhisattva hid her intentions from her mother and brother. She told her brother that she was going to see their mother, while she assured her mother that she would stay home with her brother. Bodhisattva was clever enough to make her story sound believable, and her family believed her. On the evening of January 4th, when she and Andrew arrived at the bunker, several cars were there, including those of Cody and his friends. Everyone was enjoying the music and having a good time. Their group was quite large, making them feel safe. The teens explored the empty bunker and had fun until about 4 a.m. When everyone started to leave, Cody and Bodhisattva decided to stay and sleep overnight in his car under the stars, taking advantage of the time when their mother was not there. Bodhisattva and Cody fell asleep until Cody received a call from one of his friends. The friend had lost his iPad, but Cody found it in a car and promised to return it at their next meeting. After the call, Cody went back to sleep and did not contact anyone again. Around 4:30 a.m., Scherzer woke up with a sharp pain in her chest, feeling as if she had been stabbed. She felt worried about her daughter, but decided to wait until 6:30 to call Bodhisattva. It was their family's habit to start the day with a short conversation to ask how everyone was doing. However, when Scherzer called, Bodhisattva did not answer. Scherzer tried to call her daughter, but the call was unsuccessful. She then contacted Zen and discovered Bodhisattva's lie. Zen thought her sister was with their mother, while the mother believed Bodhisattva was with Zen. They discovered that Bodhisattva had gone with Andrew, who had picked her up from home and had taken her somewhere, leaving her family worried and angry. Scherzer also tried to contact Andrew, but was unsuccessful. Scherzer, who was in another city at the time, decided to contact the police. At that time, Bodhisattva had not been reached for about 10 hours, but the police explained that it was not enough time to officially classify her as missing. The police initially thought that Bodhisattva had simply run away or gone out with friends. Meanwhile, her mother felt helpless because she was far away. Scherzer's worries grew when she called Cody's mother, who had also not seen her son since the night before and was extremely worried. They began contacting all of their son's friends and discovered that the two had attended a party at an abandoned bunker the night before, and no one had heard from them since. This was Bodhisattva's mother's worst nightmare, as she considered the location to be one of the dangerous. Zen and his friends quickly arrived at the location and found Cody's car parked outside an abandoned building. Both the driver's and passenger doors were wide open, which added to their worries as there was no one inside. Zen and his friends grabbed flashlights and entered the building. The search continued for several hours, with them splitting up and searching different areas of the bunker. Eventually, one of the friends discovered Cody in a room of the abandoned building. He showed no signs of life. The most alarming detail was that Cody was missing an eye. And Bodhisattva was still missing. Zen immediately called 911 to report the incident. Around 3 p.m. that day, Cody's mother received a call informing her that her son had been shot. Upon hearing this, Bodhisattva's mother was extremely panicked, although she still held on to a faint hope that her daughter was alive. She then quickly went to the shelter to look for her daughter. Meanwhile, the police were on their way to the scene, but the journey took a long time. When the police arrived, they searched the bunker area, and some police were outside to question those who had witnessed the incident. The bunker was complex and confusing, like a maze. Inside, it was so dark that even the light of a few lanterns could not help the police gather information. The teenagers who found Cody's body helped the police locate him. He had a serious gunshot wound to the head, which caused him to lose an eye and eventually die. Cody's body was removed from the bunker, but the search did not end there. Because it was so dark inside, the police had to wait for generators and lights to be installed inside the bunker. Later, near where Cody's body was found, police also discovered Bodhisattva's body in the hallway. She had suffered gunshot wounds to the chest and head. There were no signs of rape. The weapon used was determined to be a handgun. Both victims had multiple wounds to their bodies. Unfortunately, there were no surveillance cameras inside the shelter. Police began questioning everyone who was at the party that night, hoping that someone might have seen something unusual. This information could be crucial in solving the case. None of the victims' belongings had been stolen, not even the iPad had been left in the car. There were no signs of sexual assault or struggle. police were piecing together what might have happened on the night of the murder. After Cody's final phone call, the attackers forced the young couple out of the car and took them to a dark shelter, where they were shot one by one. It appears that Bodhisattva tried to escape but was caught at the end of the hallway and shot. The shocking murders of Bodhisattva and Cody caused widespread public outrage. Such a dangerous military site was easily accessible. It was not fenced, locked, or monitored. As a result, a debate arose over the demolition of the abandoned building. During the investigation, police learned that several years earlier, a young man had encountered a group of dangerous men in the area. The men were clean-shaven and acted aggressively, suggesting they were members of the same gang. However, the men were never seen again after that encounter. In their investigation, the police focused on a call made by a friend to Cody at 4:30 a.m., when Cody was still alive. Bodhisattva's mother then attempted to reach her daughter at 6:30 a.m. but was unable to make contact. This timeline indicates that the tragic events leading to the double murder occurred between these two calls, starting after 4:30 a.m. A large amount of evidence was collected at the crime scene. Forensic scientists had to analyze thousands of fingerprints and hundreds of spent cartridges, as well as a large amount of trash in the abandoned building, to determine what was related to the case. In addition, the victims' computers were confiscated for valuable information. Police believe that Cody and Bodhisattva may have had an argument with someone, leading to the attack. During questioning, some friends who attended the party recalled that 3 strangers entered the basement. These strangers, aged 17 to 18, arrived in a Honda Odyssey van around midnight and asked to join the party. They were allowed to stay and brought alcohol to share. Cody's group thought they were normal teenagers and didn't suspect anything unusual. However, none of Cody's friends could remember when the strangers left the party. On January 13th, the police received a crucial tip from Sean, an informant. He revealed that his friend, David Smith, had called him on the night of the murders, inviting Sean to a bunker for shooting practice. Sean declined the invitation. A few days later, David contacted him again, sounding very concerned. Sean asked David about recent events, and Sean received a vague answer that alluded to a serious crime. This led Sean to suspect that David might be involved in the double murder at the bunker, so he reported his concerns to the police. Police later interviewed a key witness, who identified David Smith as a 19-year-old from Limestone, about an hour and a half from Holy Dale. On the night of the murder, David and his friends Colin McLaughlin, 18, and Cameron Thompson, 16, had set out for a fun night out that turned deadly. They drove Cameron's mother's SUV into the desert, where they stumbled upon a bunker party. The teens gathered there became their targets, leading to the tragic events that unfolded. In 2007, David, a former high school track and field athlete, lost his athletic scholarship to the University of California, Riverside after a disagreement with the head coach. Unable to pay for college, he was expelled and moved in with his friend Cameron, who then introduced him to Colin. The 3 quickly became close friends, but their aggressive behavior scared the local residents. The 3 criminals were arrested on January 17th. But all 3 denied any involvement in the crime. During a police search of their home, the police found the murder weapon. In addition, blood was found on clothing and shoes, and tests confirmed that the blood belonged to Bodhisattva and Cody, who were murdered. Friends who were present at the bunker that night identified the attackers as strangers who had brought alcohol to the party. All of the teens came from troubled families. Colin's father was a police officer, which gave them access to the weapon used in the murder. Colin, considered the ringleader of the group, had struggled with mental health issues since he was 5 years old. By the age of 17, Colin had attended 7 different schools and had spent some time in an adult detention center. He had significant difficulties adapting socially, which were made worse by his use of alcohol and drugs. During the investigation, Many witnesses reported his troubling behavior. Colin even confided in friends that he had thoughts of killing. When he was angry or had an argument with his parents, he would often threaten to kill them. As Colin entered his teens, many people began to fear him, especially when he started talking about mass murder online. During a search of Colin's belongings, police discovered evidence that he had a history of violence. Colin had repeatedly threatened to kill others, including writing detailed notes about shooting up classmates. While in school, he was evaluated by a psychiatrist and diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and he was put on medication. At age 16, Colin faced court charges for attempting to build an explosive device, a year before he killed Bodhisattva and Cody. He was placed in juvenile detention and, upon his release, was placed on probation for several months. Prior to the killings, he had stopped taking his bipolar medication. The suspects, Colin McLaughlin, Cameron Thompson, and David Smith, have not confessed to the crime. However, during pre-trial hearings, Colin was identified as the primary perpetrator of the murder and was released on $2 million bail. He faces a potential prison sentence of 111 years. In contrast, David Smith's bail was set at $1 million and he faces up to 81 years in prison for his involvement in the crime. In February 2009, the prosecutor's office announced its intention to pursue the death penalty against Colin, while David and Cameron were likely to receive life sentences. The defense argued that Colin, who suffers from bipolar disorder, should receive treatment instead of being detained or executed. As a result, a psychological evaluation was ordered. In 2010, two forensic psychiatrists evaluated Colin and determined that he was mentally sound and aware of his actions at the time of the crime, meaning he was sane and competent to stand trial. Bodhisattva's mother Scherzer believed that the killer should not be executed. She felt that the appropriate punishment would be imprisonment for all three criminals so that they could understand the severity of their actions. The case took a long time to resolve, lasting more than 4 years due to discussions about the evidence and the ages of the criminals. It was eventually decided to try the criminals as adults. In 2011, Cameron Thompson reached a deal with the prosecution. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter and attempted robbery. He agreed to testify against his two friends. Cameron explained that the three of them had planned to rob a car in the desert, but when they arrived, they found no one there. Instead, they stumbled upon a party in a nearby bunker. Initially, they asked to join and gain the trust of the teenagers at the party. But there were too many people and they realized that this was not the right time to strike. They decided to wait until most of the teens had left before attacking anyone. The criminals hid in a truck, armed with guns, and were not detected by Cody. When the couple fell asleep in the truck, the criminals sprang into action. They forced the sleeping couple out of the truck at gunpoint and took them to a dark, secluded area of the bunker. There, they forced the couple to their knees, and Cody was shot execution style. Bodhisattva tried to escape but was caught and shot by Colin. They then returned to Cody and shot him again. Unfortunately for the criminals, the couple had no valuables, so the robbery was unsuccessful. They then left the bunker and went home. As part of the deal, Cameron was sentenced to life in prison. Although he had the right to apply for parole, his request was denied and he remains in custody. Colin also accepted a plea deal. Colin remained mostly calm throughout the trial. However, there were instances where he laughed, stuck out his tongue, or acted defiantly, suggesting underlying mental health issues. As a result, Colin was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. In 2016, David Smith, a third defendant, also reached a deal. For his cooperation with police, he was sentenced to 50 years in prison and was eligible for parole after 12 years. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Blanca Arellano. Blanca Olivia Arellano was born on February 6, 1971, in Hatiso Pan de Zaragoza, located in the northwest of the state of Mexico, Mexico. She was the youngest daughter of Dolores Gutierrez. She had two older sisters, Alejandra and Perla. Later, her sister gave birth to a baby girl named Carla Arellano. As an adult, Blanca successfully completed her education and earned a bachelor's degree in tourism. With her qualifications, she worked for several years at a travel agency. After that, her new job was as a taxi driver. In her free time, Blanca takes care of her health by cycling and going to the gym every morning. She believed that sports were essential to living a fulfilling and happy life. Although she was comfortable being on her own, she was rarely alone. She was fortunate to have close friends, Mercedes and Maru, with whom she often spent time. Three friends meet regularly to share stories of their days and confide in each other. Spirituality plays a very important role for Blanca. She organized spiritual master classes and led meditation rituals. In particular, she has become increasingly proficient in the topic of family constellations, a topic that interests many people. She has achieved professional qualifications in this area. Although these activities are not directly related to her main job, she saw them as a way to fulfill her desire. It is about helping others find harmony and healing. Blanca always wore an amulet ring called Atlas. Inside was engraved an infinity symbol, a symbol she really liked. She even crafted a matching bracelet with the same design. She cherishes her guardian ring, believing that it protects and gives her strength on her journey to find balance and peace in her soul. Because of the profound spiritual significance, so she never removed the ring. To her, the ring talisman was far more than just a piece of jewelry. In mid-2019, shortly before turning 50, Blanca developed an interest in online games and began spending a significant amount of time on the computer. Her niece, Carla, noticed this new hobby of hers and invited her to join a popular game. This game included a streaming platform where players could interact. One of the users was a man named Juan Pablo Jesus Villafuerte. In the game, players entered a virtual space, navigating obstacles and fighting for survival. Blanca became deeply engrossed in the game, especially because it allowed her to connect with people from around the globe. Before long, Blanca met Juan, the administrator of one of the virtual rooms. Juan, born in 1985, was from Arequipa, Peru. He had a twin brother and an older brother, Francisca Villafuerte, who worked as a lawyer. Juan had previously been married and had 2 children from that marriage. However, after his wife accused him of domestic violence, the relationship ended in divorce. In 2016, Juan decided to move to the city of Huá, located 2 hours by car from Lima, the country's capital. There, he enrolled in the medical faculty of the National University named after José Faustino Sánchez Carrion. Through the internet, Juan met Blanca, and they began communicating regularly. Over time, their conversations became frequent, helped both understand each other better. He trusted she so much that he made her the administrator of his virtual game room. On March 2020, Blanca spent most of her time playing online games and talking to Juan. They frequently made video calls and watched movies together late into the night. Juan, who plays guitar, often sends her videos and songs he has composed specifically for her. On her 50th birthday, he even wrote a heartfelt post on her social media page. From that moment, their relationship shifted from friendship to romance. Blanca, deeply in love, felt happiness, but she was afraid to tell her mother, sister, and friends about it. Eventually, she decided to open up and express her feelings. Juan then revealed his wish to meet her in person, which required him to travel to Mexico. However, he later admitted he didn't have enough money for the trip. Determined to make it happen, She told Juan that she would travel to Peru to make her dream come true. It was meeting him face to face. Blanca was prepared for anything. Given her challenging financial situation, she decided to sell some of her belongings, including a car, a bicycle, and various pieces of clothing. She quickly managed to gather the necessary funds. In July 2022, Blanca purchased a plane ticket to Lima. Shortly before her departure, she informed her family about her plans. Initially, her decision surprised her mother and sisters. However, after some thought, Alejandra, her older sister, acknowledged that Blanca was an adult and had the right to make her own choices in life. Ultimately, Alejandra simply wished her younger sister well. On July 27, 2022, Blanca boarded the plane, eager to reunite with Juan. A new chapter in her life began. By 2:45 a.m. the next day, she had arrived in Peru, where Juan greeted her at Jorge Chávez Airport. Their first stop was at the riverside, where Juan introduced Blanca to his family. After this gathering, they went to a room Juan had rented from Mrs. Magdi Loli Milan. However, there was a complication. The room was rented for one person only, so they had to keep Blanca a secret. One might think that Blanca would feel uncomfortable in a foreign country, where she knew no one, but she was entirely unbothered. She stayed confident in her plans, which included buying a car and becoming a taxi driver in Lima. Driving was what she did best, and she's sure she could continue her usual work in a new city. She regularly contacts Alejandra and Carla to keep her loved ones updated. She shared details about her daily life and the beautiful places she managed to visit. Everything was going perfectly for her, just as she had envisioned. Blanca was also happy to share her excitement about a new romance. She and Juan lived near the beach, a location she adored. She often recorded videos of the stunning ocean views and sent them to her family. To stay connected with Juan while he was at school, she purchased a local mobile phone. She told her mother and Carla about the phone but, curiously, didn't share her new number with them. While this struck her family as a bit odd, everything else seemed fine, and they soon let it slip from their minds. While Juan was studying, Blanca spent time alone in her room attending online training sessions with her friend, Mercedes. It was an innocent activity, but Juan disapproved, so Blanca tried to keep it hidden until he got home. Then, she admitted to Mercedes that she was secretly participating in the training. This made Mercedes reflect on Juan's overly controlling behavior toward Blanca. She started thinking about it more and more, and over time, their relationship began to fall apart. At that time, Blanca had no job, no income either, so Juan was giving her $20 a week for expenses. Their arguments and disagreements became more frequent. Sometimes, Juan made excuses about having to attend classes so he wouldn't come home in the evening. In October 2022, Juan met a woman named Carmen Marin Castillo, who rented out a room for students in Northeast Lima. Immediately after that, he and Carmen fell in love. Soon, he started spending more and more time with Carmen. Feeling confident in his feelings for her, he decided to end things with Blanca. On November 6, 2022, around 2 p.m., Juan was in Lima and sent Blanca a message saying he would arrive in 3 hours. At approximately 6 p.m., he arrived at Mercedes in Deco Street, turned off the GPS on his phone, and went to meet Blanca. He attacked Blanca, striking her multiple times on the head and ribs. He continued beating her until she stopped breathing. Using his medical tools, he dismembered her body to make it easier to easily dispose of it. Realizing that Blanca could be identified by her tattoo, he removed it and distorted her fingerprints. The next morning, Juan started searching the internet for information on how to factory reset the phone Blanca used. Meanwhile, her loved ones grew anxious because they had stopped receiving messages from her. Carla is trying to find her aunt, Blanca. She reached out to Juan on social media to ask about her aunt's whereabouts. Juan claimed he had no information about Blanca's, but he explained that Blanca was unhappy with their relationship and had decided to go to Lima for a break. He added that, after realizing he couldn't give her the life she wanted, she planned to return to Mexico. Blanca's family found Juan's explanation puzzling. She had never mentioned her relationship with him nor expressed any desire to come back home. Distrusting the words of Juan, someone they barely knew, they decided to seek help from local residents. Together, they created a social media post about Blanca's disappearance, naming Juan as the only person she had been in close contact with in the unfamiliar city. Feeling desperate and powerless due to the vast distance between them, her family managed to file an official report with the prosecutor's office after several hours, officially declaring she missing. The Peruvian National Police promptly began an investigation. Meanwhile, Juan worked on creating an alibi. He called his university friend, Edson Amir Flores Aragon, claiming he felt unwell and needed some help. Around 4 p.m., Edson arrived at Juan's house, where Juan offered him a few drinks. After some time, Edson became heavily intoxicated. By approximately 6 p.m., Juan took him outside, ensuring the neighbors saw them together. The two then went to a store, where Juan purchased 8 garbage bags. Afterward, Juan said goodbye to Edson and returned home. Once alone, Juan placed Blanca's dismembered body into the garbage bags. Later that evening, he went to the beach near the port of Chorrillos to dispose of the remains. At the site, a canal flowed into the sea, and Juan completed his gruesome task before heading back home. On November 8, 2022, he left the house carrying a large backpack and went to a shopping center. There, he purchased various cleaning supplies, including a significant amount of chlorine. A surveillance camera captured him as he left the store. After returning home, Juan carefully cleaned the room, determined to erase all evidence and continue his life as if nothing had happened. 2 days later, on November 10, 2022, a group of fishermen were working at the beach port when they noticed a flock of birds circling over the shore. Curious, they approached the area and made a horrifying discovery. On the sand lay a head, a hand, and a body. Terrified, the fishermen immediately contacted the police. The police arrived at the scene, accompanied by representatives from the Prosecutor General's Office of Forensic Science. While examining the remains, they noticed something unusual, a ring on the victim's fingers. Investigators initially hypothesized that the woman had been killed elsewhere and her dismembered body had been moved to the beach. However, to confirm the identity of the victim, they needed to analyze the remains. The investigation soon hit a major obstacle. The victim's fingers had been mutilated, making it impossible to take fingerprints. This unusual detail led investigators to suspect that the victim might be a foreigner. During a press conference, Yidata Police Chief Elvis Boss Billiards informed the media that the victim was believed to be a woman between 35 and 45 years old. Meanwhile, a rumor has emerged on social media that a Mexican tourist who visited Lima a few months ago has gone missing. As the investigation progressed, the National Police linked the two cases. Unaware of the investigation's developments, Carla continued to locate her missing aunt, Blanca. On November 12, she once again appealed to the public for help. She accused Juan of being the main suspect in her aunt Blanca's disappearance, as he was the last person who had been with Blanca's in Peru. This accusation alarmed Juan, so he took defensive measures. Juan responded with a new story, filled with inconsistencies and untruths. He claimed that Blanca in Peru is homeless, and that he was merely helping her out of kindness. He denied having any romantic relationship with her. He even announced his intention to sue Blanca's family for defamation. Carla, however, firmly refuted all of his claims. From that point on, the two began a heated dispute on social media. Carla defended Blanca's reputation while he tried to evade responsibility in every possible way. He then changed his profile picture and deleted all photos and other documents related to his relationship with Blanca. On November 13th, the Mexican prosecutor's office announces it will travel to the United States to speed up the investigation, gather necessary information, and summon the suspect to court. By November 14th, Juan had been officially identified as the primary suspect in Blanca's disappearance. During the interrogation, he said nothing and was uncooperative, leading investigators to search his home. His brother, Francisca, who is also his lawyer, is confused by his silence. But Francisca maintains that there is no romantic relationship between Juan and Blanca. That same day, Blanca's relatives contacted the police to share key information, reporting that Juan had personally gone to the airport to pick up Blanca when she arrives in Lima. The evidence continues to emerge, shedding light on the case. During analysis of the photos, investigators confirmed that the ring found on the beach belonged to Blanca. On November 15th, during a search of Juan's home, more important evidence was found. Inside the house, investigators found 3 suitcases, a Mexican flag, women's clothing, and hair. Using fluorescent lighting, traces of blood were found in the bedroom, bathroom, shower, on the mattress, and in a vase. Based on this evidence, authorities requested Juan's temporary arrest. Subsequent DNA tests confirmed that the evidence found in the house undeniably belonged to Blanca. Blanca's family, including Alejandra and Carla, were devastated upon hearing the news. They went to Peru with the intention of testifying against Juan in court. Once there, they faced the heartbreaking task of identifying Blanca's clothing. Meanwhile, Juan has run away with his lover, Carmen. In 2022, the Peruvian Supreme Court issued a preliminary arrest warrant for Juan. However, authorities were shocked to discover that he had escaped. Their concern grew when they remembered that Juan had a twin brother, which could complicate the investigation. Despite this, authorities soon located he at Carmen's house, in San Juan de Lurigancho. He was immediately taken to the National Criminal Investigation Department in Lima and detained for 72 hours. During the interrogation, Juan maintained his innocence. He claimed that he was not present at the time of the murder, and asserting that his relationship with Blanca was purely an online friendship. At the hearing, he portrayed himself as a wrongfully accused man, expressed sympathy for Blanca's family, and urged the police to find the real perpetrators. On November 22, 2022, a hearing was held where it was requested that Juan be placed in custody. Prosecutor Marcus said it would be difficult to convince people of Juan's involvement in Blanca's murder. But he stressed that if Juan were released, he would likely try to escape again. The court approved the request, and Juan was sent to Carquin prison in Gua, where he was to remain for at least 9 months. Before the trial concluded, he filed an appeal. However, his lawyer did not attend the hearing. The judge rejected the appeal, stating that sufficient evidence had been gathered to prove Juan's involvement in the crimes and reminding him of his false testimony. During this time, Blanca's family tried their best to bring her body home in order to hold a funeral for her. Initially, this seemed impossible, as further testing on the remains might have been required as the investigation continued. Finally, in February 2023, Blanca's remains were sent to Mexico. Her family entrusted the remains to a funeral home for cremation and announced they would temporarily keep the ashes. After justice is served, they plan to take her ashes to the church so she can rest in peace forever. Meanwhile, Juan remained in prison awaiting his trial, scheduled for August 2023. During the trial, the prosecutor's office, the defense, and several witnesses presented testimony. The accused, Juan Pablo Jesus Villafuerte, was found guilty, and the court proceedings moved to the stage of delivering the verdict. On September 12, 2023, a virtual court session held by the Supreme Court of Lima announced the decision. Present at the session were Juan, who was in prison, his lawyer, Fernando, and one of Blanca's sisters. In his statement, the judge said that although the prosecutor's office accused Juan of organ trafficking, the complaint was dismissed due to lack of evidence. However, the judge confirmed that Juan had used his medical expertise to dismember Blanca's body. Additional evidence also revealed that her personal belongings, including her passport, driver's license, and mobile phone, had been found in Juan's house. Thus, Juan Pablo Jesus Villafuerte was convicted of the murder of Blanca Arellano and sentenced to 35 years in prison. Furthermore, he was fined $1,000, payable to Blanca's family. After the verdict was announced, Carla, Blanca's niece, expressed her dissatisfaction. She argued that the 35-year sentence did not reflect the severity and cruelty of what Juan had done. She believes that such a sentence would allow rapists and murderers of women chance to reintegrate into society, something she finds unacceptable. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Monica McCarrick. Tori and her twin sister Lily Ball were born in September 2007 to parents Monica McCarrick and Michael Ball, who lived in San Diego, California. Their relationship was difficult from the start, partly due to their 10-year age gap. Monica struggled with substance abuse, which often led to her run-ins with the police. In 2006, she was arrested for domestic violence and given probation, but her aggressive behavior continued, eventually leading to the couple's divorce. Following the split, Michael filed for custody of the twins in 2009. Monica's life took a new turn. She began dating Robert Paulson, her first love. They had been friends for over 10 years, and their long-distance relationship began on Thanksgiving Day 2009 when Monica discovered her ex's social media page and contacted him. They began communicating as friends. However, Robert was in a relationship with another girl named Jill. In April 2010, a tragic event occurred when Jill took her own life with Robert's gun. Robert had a passion for guns and owned a collection that included a samurai sword and an agile rifle. After this heartbreaking incident, Monica supported Robert through his grief and they became closer, eventually starting a romantic relationship. In May 2010, Monica and the children moved to Pennsylvania. Their romance progressed quickly, leading to their engagement just days later. Monica was very happy during this time. She became a devoted mother, worked as a manager at a dental office, and pursued further education. Robert was also happy, and it seemed like their lives were improving. Unfortunately, this story would not have a happy ending. In August 2010, Monica and Robert moved to California while still planning their wedding. They rented an apartment in a residential area in Fairfield. Monica was looking for a school for her daughters and had obtained her license to practice dentistry. Robert supported her and admired her dedication as a mother to ensuring a good future for her daughters. He appreciated her calm demeanor. Robert worked for a film crew, which required him to travel for filming, resulting in him being absent for long periods of time. On September 9, 2010, just a month after moving to California, Robert was called away on a long business trip to film a movie in Minnesota. This left him with no choice but to leave, which upset Monica. She was not ready to let him go, as she still had unresolved issues from the move and wanted to improve their life together. Monica nevertheless agreed to let Robert go on the business trip. At first, everything seemed fine, but about 3 weeks after he left, Robert began to notice that Monica's behavior had changed significantly. She began to act very strangely. Monica discovers a script written by Robert that depicts a horror story about a man who chases children down a beach, ultimately leading to their deaths. Monica understands that the script is about her family and fears for her children's safety. However, Robert denied all of this. Robert insisted that it was a work of fiction related to his work. Throughout Robert's business trip, Monica frequently brought up her concerns in conversation. Eventually, she began to claim that Robert's previous girlfriend had died because of him. Monica suspected that Robert was involved with another woman at the time and believed that his affair contributed to his ex-girlfriend's tragic decision. Robert spent hours on the phone and texting Monica to calm her down. Unfortunately, this only worked for a short time before she began to express new suspicions. People who came into contact with her during this time noticed her paranoid behavior. Monica wanted Robert to stay home and objected to his long business trips. Robert reassured her that his trip to Minnesota would be over soon and that she was eagerly awaiting his return. On the day before his return, Robert's manager informed him that he would need to stay in Alaska for another 5 to 10 days to finish filming, as they had found the ideal location for some of the missing scenes. When he shared this news with Monica, she became extremely upset. She tried her best to convince him to return home with her and the children, saying that she could not handle the situation on her own. Although she pleaded for help, Robert felt helpless and asked her to be patient a little longer. Monica was not completely alone, her family supported her. However, Robert noticed that her mental state seemed unstable. Her friends, who remained in contact with her during this time, often mentioned this in their conversations. On September 25, Monica contacted her friend Regina, expressing that she feared for her life. Monica truly believed that Robert and his mother might harm her. She asked Regina to contact the police if anything happened to her. That same day, Monica contacted her friend Maritza to express her concerns about Robert and his family. She stressed that she felt unsafe and feared for the safety of her children. Maritza called her to discuss the matter further. During the conversation, Monica shared that her suspicions were related to a script Robert had written that depicted a murder involving a woman and her children. Maritza reassured Monica, and for a moment things seemed to calm down, but the calm did not last long. Maritza received another alarming text message 3 days later, on September 29th. In this message, Monica claimed that someone wanted to kidnap her children and harm her. She also contacted another friend, Pamela, expressing her fear that Robert intended to harm her. Monica was genuinely afraid for her safety, but she also hoped that her fears were paranoid. She stressed that if she or her children went missing, it was important to contact the police and hold Robert accountable. Unfortunately, Pamela was unable to visit Monica this time because she was in another city visiting her mother. The conversation ended with Monica declaring her intention to go to the police to prove Robert's involvement in the murder of his ex-girlfriend, Jill. However, many of her text messages were inconsistent. She expressed stress about raising her children, feeling overwhelmed by having to deal with the problems on her own. This confused the Pamela, who knew that Robert worked hard to provide for the family. At the same time, Monica often mentioned her desire to be free, to relax, and to enjoy herself. Michael often took the Tori and Lily out, giving Monica a chance to relax. She also had many friends and family to lean on. Not everyone was able to respond immediately to Monica when a problem arose, but they were able to reach her within a few hours to offer their support. They constantly help her. Friends and acquaintances noted that in Pennsylvania, Monica was much calmer and handled everyday problems well, even when she was alone. However, when she moved to California, where all her relatives and friends lived, she became panicky about Robert's absence. From September 29th to October 4th, 2010, Monica and her children traveled to San Diego to visit their mother. During this visit, she shared a script written by Robert, which frightened her. She was also concerned about the many weapons stored in the home. She feared that Robert intended to harm them with these weapons and discussed her concerns with her mother. Monica was clearly nervous and anxious about her upcoming wedding. However, after she and her daughters went shopping for wedding dresses, her mood changed. Monica seemed happy and excited, taking many pictures of the dress she had chosen and sending them to friends and family, including one to her grandmother, Terry Faye. They had a close relationship, with her grandmother visiting regularly and supporting her. On October 11th, Monica called her grandmother Terry again and expressed her fear of losing her daughter and her concerns for her own safety. However, during this call, Terry noticed that Monica's behavior was unusual. Monica's situation is confusing. She has moved across the country in search of a better life, hoping to be closer to her family. Her goal is to marry Robert and build a life with him and their children. However, she frequently expresses fears for her safety, especially around Robert. Despite her fear of Robert, she pursues the marriage. Meanwhile, Michael is fighting for custody of their twins. Robert's mother, Roxanne, became increasingly concerned about Monica. While her son was away, she noticed that Monica was losing control. Monica handled things well at first, but as time went on, her instability became more apparent. Roxanne often takes Tori and Lily for walks, giving Monica time to rest. Occasionally, Monica and the children would visit Roxanne. An alarming incident occurred while Monica was sleeping at Roxanne's house. She suddenly woke up around 3 in the morning and began to prepare for something. Roxanne heard a noise and went outside to check what was going on. Monica pointed to a car parked on the street near her house, believing that someone was following her, which made her very nervous. Roxanne, knowing the owner of the car, tried to reassure Monica. The car belonged to a neighbor who had just returned home late from work. He had lived in the area for a long time, was a devoted family man and did not pose any threat to them. Monica's concerns did not subside, so she took her daughters and went home, insisting she did not feel safe. When she returned home, she began to feel more comfortable. The next morning, she informed Robert's mother, Roxanne, that she was feeling fine. In the afternoon, she called Roxanne at work, saying that a delivery man had come to her house and hinted that he might be part of a plot to harm her. Despite Roxanne's attempts to calm her down, Monica remained restless. She then tried to call her mother, but her mother was at work and could not talk for long. Her mother reassured Monica to calm down. Monica replied that everything was fine and then ended the call. The next morning, October 12th, the neighborhood manager came to Monica's apartment to ask her to move her car. She parked her car blocking several other parking spaces. When the manager knocked on the door, Monica was too scared to open it. After a long conversation through the door, Monica finally agreed to open the door and go outside to park her car properly. During this time, the manager noticed that Monica's 2 daughters, Tori and Lily, were in the apartment and they seemed okay. Monica called in to take time off work so she could get a new hairstyle for her wedding. While she was on the phone, her manager noticed a child crying in the background. Robert later spoke to Monica on the phone and via text messages. He found her messages confusing and included some inappropriate quotes. From what he could understand, it sounded like she was talking about children. One message read, "Let the bunnies go away forever." Robert understood this to be a reference to the custody battle involving Monica's ex-husband, Michael, who was seeking full custody. It was likely that the court would award custody to Michael, which would mean that Lily and Tori could be separated from Monica. With her past issues with substance abuse and mental health, she was at risk of losing her parental rights. However, Robert was busy and didn't think much of the message. That evening, Monica and Robert spoke on the phone. Monica was very difficult to understand, speaking very quickly and seeming to move around her apartment, with a lot of background noise. She hung up several times but called back immediately. She insisted that whatever had happened should be considered an accident. It was unclear what she meant, but her tone was very disturbing. Monica also mentioned that she had planned to start a fire with her children. Suddenly, the fire alarm went off, and he heard Monica scream before the call abruptly ended. Worried, Robert kept calling Monica, but no one answered. Worried, he contacted the police to check on her. It felt like a horrible nightmare, but he had no idea that the situation was much more horrifying than he could have imagined. Monica fed Tori and Lily and tied them to high chairs. She then took a samurai sword from the wall in Robert's office and began to violently attack the children. Within minutes, Monica had killed Tori and Lily and used their bodies to barricade the apartment door before setting the apartment on fire. The neighbors only heard the children's short cries and some noises, which did not arouse any suspicion. When the fire alarm rang, it was too late. The downstairs neighbor noticed smoke coming from the apartment above and called the police. After calling, he quickly ran upstairs and broke down the door, but it wouldn't open. He then tried to enter through the sliding window of the third-floor apartment. Luckily, he was able to reach the window and get in. The room was filled with thick smoke, making it difficult to see. When the neighbor entered the area where the tragic incident with the children took place, the entire floor was covered in blood, and there was a sword and a medicine bottle on the ground, which could have been the murder weapon. Unfortunately, it was too late to save Tori and Lily. When police arrived, they were unable to enter the home immediately because the children's bodies were blocking the front door. After some struggle, they were able to get inside. The entire apartment was filled with smoke, and the fire was in the pantry next to the front door. After the fire was extinguished and the smoke cleared, the rescue team discovered the children's bodies. They also found Monica, who was unconscious and had suffered multiple serious injuries that appeared to be self-inflicted. Monica was rushed to the medical center in critical condition. Her injuries included lacerations to her neck and hands, several severed fingers, and severed tendons. Both ankles were injured, and there was a deep wound to her thigh. During a search of the apartment, police found several weapons, including a loaded rifle, a shotgun, and a loaded pistol. A significant amount of live ammunition was discovered in the hallway, along with a sword and a lighter that Monica used to start a fire in the pantry. 2 high chairs, which were overturned and covered in blood, indicated that the children were eating when the murder occurred, as trays with plates and food were found scattered on the floor. A laptop displaying cartoons was in front of them. The kitchen table was also smeared with blood, suggesting that there was an attempt to clean it hurriedly. Additionally, a thrilling novel by James Patterson about a serial killer was opened to a page that read, "My daughter died." During the analysis of the vial, forensic experts found no dangerous or powerful drugs. During the autopsy, they discovered multiple injuries on Tori and Lily. Tori had 11 cuts on her face and deep wounds on the front of her neck. On her chest, there were 9 shallow cuts and 2 stab wounds. One punctured her lung and the other punctured her heart. Lily had multiple injuries, including 5 cuts on her face and neck and 9 cuts on her chest, including one so severe that it nearly severed her head. The sword had severed Lily's larynx and arteries. The children's arms were the most injured, suggesting the twins had attempted to defend themselves. None of the girls inhaled smoke from the fire, indicating that they were already dead when the fire started, as there was no soot in their lungs. The brutality of their murders shocked all the experts involved in the case. Shortly after being released from the hospital, 27-year-old Monica was arrested and charged with 2 counts of premeditated murder, arson, attempting to destroy evidence, and obstructing the investigation. Confined to a wheelchair and covered in bandages, she appeared in court on October 26, 2010, where she did not plead guilty. Monica argued that her crime was a result of insanity, leading to her being sent for a psychiatric evaluation from October 2010 to June 2011. A prison psychiatrist met with her more than 10 times, spending around 20 hours in discussions, conducting various psychological tests, reviewing her medical records, and speaking with her family members. The psychiatrist found that when Monica was 14, she had displayed similar self-harming behaviors. At that time, she was diagnosed with a type of attention deficit disorder and prescribed medication to manage it. However, she did not complete her treatment and later began abusing illegal drugs, which resulted in her developing bipolar disorder. The Monica stated that she started drinking alcohol at 12 and began using marijuana at 14, which ultimately led to her becoming addicted to illegal drugs by 18. From 2003 to 2005, she was diagnosed with depression while living in San Diego and received professional psychiatric treatment. After Robert went on a business trip, she relapsed and used drugs throughout September and October 2010. Monica reported experiencing paranoid thoughts, common in heavy users. She confessed to her psychiatrist that she had been heavily intoxicated in the 4 days before the crime. Monica often told her doctor that her addiction made it difficult for her to communicate with her children. As a result, she often tried to stay away from them, sometimes leaving them with strangers. She called her loved ones several times, seeking their help, and they tried to support her. However, the psychiatrist revealed that Monica's problems were not only due to illegal drugs. In the days leading up to the tragic event, she experienced delusions, paranoia, and feelings of being persecuted. She believed that Robert and his mother were planning to kidnap her daughters and torture them, a fear that was heightened by a story Robert wrote. In prison, she told a psychiatrist that she had read in a book the exact time that the attackers would arrive to try to enslave her daughter. The psychiatrist recognized this as a symptom known as reference ideas, in which the patient believes that ordinary events contain hidden messages. Monica was convinced that certain events were destined to happen. Monica believed that this was a sign that her children would be enslaved. In her desperation to save Tori and Lily, she realized that even if she saved them from Robert, she could still lose them if her ex-husband Michael won custody in court. This led her to the tragic conclusion that her daughters needed to be killed, which she did. However, despite her serious actions, her thought process showed that she was still quite sane, despite some mental health issues. She planned to barricade the door so that it could not be opened immediately and only set it on fire after killing her children, with the intention of covering up what had happened. Another psychiatrist, after speaking with Monica, concluded that she was not fully aware of her actions. He believed that Monica thought she was saving her children when she brutally killed them. On October 25, 2011, while in prison, Monica confided to a fellow inmate that she was hearing voices. By November, she began to have paranoid thoughts, fearing that she would be attacked. In April 2012, she overdosed while still incarcerated. Monica reported using illegal drugs, and prison guards observed that she drank up to 12 cups of coffee a day, which worsened her mental state. She frequently expressed concerns about threats to her life from prison gangs and often attempted to communicate with doctors and other professionals. But her reports were inconsistent, unclear, and sometimes completely false. Her psychological evaluation hearings dragged on. Michael attended the trial and asked not to show mercy to the Monica who'd taken the lives of the babies. The final decision was up to the jury. After hours of deliberation, they concluded that Monica had intentionally killed Tori and Lily. On June 15, 2012, Monica McCarrick was convicted of first-degree murder. The jury sentenced Monica to 2 consecutive life terms in state prison without the possibility of parole. During her trial, she cried. She told the court that she was praying for everyone's well-being, despite her own deteriorating condition. Monica expressed that she loved her daughters. Monica is currently serving her sentence in a California prison and has attempted to appeal her sentence multiple times. On August 22, 2019, an online petition was started, urging the governor of California to overturn Monica's sentence. The petition claims that nearly all psychiatric experts who have reviewed her case believe she was not aware of her actions when the crime occurred. However, as of now, only 144 people have signed the petition, and Monica is still incarcerated.